Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 180. My name is NBZ and eventually Bally, we will turn around in a full circle. I think I already made this joke last time, but now we're actually here. We're literally backwards at 180. It's great. When we get to episode 316, we turn back around. That's when the true, the truth will be revealed to our eyes. It's like in Plato's cave, right? You turn, or maybe we're at Plato's cave now. I don't even know what I'm saying. Hello, this is MNBZ.
What is Plato's cave?
Okay, Plato's cave was a thing, this is relevant, right? Because we're talking about Hades in a second, it's Greek myth. Plato's cave is this idea, it's kind of this philosophy that, it's kind of like the Matrix, right? The idea of the Matrix is that you live in this world that you believe is reality that isn't reality. Plato's cave, takes the idea that you have people who live in this cave and all they see in front of them is this wall with shadows moving about on it, and they think that is reality. They think that is the entirety of the world in which they live in, is these shadows moving on this wall. And then as soon as they are broken from that reality, they go outside and they realize, oh wait, there's an entire world out here, and that wasn't what reality was, right? Anyway, it's philosophy. It's interesting. I can't believe you've never heard of Plato's cave. It's one of the most famous things.
I know. Plato's not even in Hades. How am I meant to know?
Exactly, that's the thing. We've got our DLC character Plato.
There's a few big characters I want to say from Greek mythology missing, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're in the story. I've just not found them yet.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, hi, you're Bally. How you doing, Bally?
I'm doing well. I've been playing a lot of games. I'm trying to clear the decks before PlayStation 5, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah, too much, one might say, or too little, or the too little time, who knows. When you only play Hades, there's only so much you can do with your life. But we will get to that. Just before we start the show, I'd like to give a shout out to a podcast I guest starred on. I was on the Game for All show with my friend Jordan, who I met at the Kind of Funny meet and greet last year, and Sean as well, who I also met there, and then their friend Luke. So that is a fun show that you can go listen to, and I talk about my history with Nintendo, and we talk about the future of Nintendo and fun things like that. So if you want to listen to me guesting on another podcast, I will put the link to that in the description of the show, so you can go and click it and tell them that we sent you, all that fun stuff.
It's a good show.
Yeah, it was a great show. I had a great time.
Very good.
It was good fun. Cool. So you can check that out. We are going to talk about a lot of things on this show, however, Bally, do you want to enlighten the fine folks?
So we've got a 2-segment show this time. First segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. And then the second segment, we're going to talk about another game that we've been playing. And we're going to go deep and discuss Mario 64. Obviously, we're discussing all 3 games in the 3D All-Stars collection. And the first game up today is Mario 64. So we've been enjoying that game, and we'll talk about that in the second segment, bring in some of your comments and your thoughts on the games.
Absolutely, it will be very enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to it. But first, we gotta get down to business, Bally. I've been playing fucking loads of Hades, and I cannot stop. It is a drug. I'm addicted.
So how many runs are you on?
I'm on 40 runs.
40. See, I think I'm on 30. I'm on my 33rd, and I've beaten the game once.
Yes, you have.
And
Congratulations,
it was hard,
Bally.
and I loved it, and I'm so glad I did it. And now apparently I need to do it 9 more times.
Yes, that's kind of the thing. Which, when I heard that, I was like, man, am I going to do that? I don't know, because it was...
That's how I'm feeling currently, but I think after my next win, I'll feel the motivation. I just need that next burst of energy, which I feel like I constantly get in Hades, where the highs and you feel the low when you die and you restart, and then you think, oh, this weapon is crap, I'm never going to use it again, and then suddenly you use it again, and now you're like, this is the best weapon in the game, what have I been doing wrong? And I love this.
It's just
boon.
like the idea of the boon system and the way that it all interlinks, right? Because you can just get combinations, because there are so many gods with so many different weapons,
like
and
10 gods?
The idea... I think so, maybe 8 or 9. I can't remember the full scope, but probably around that many. And because you have this numbers game of like, it's randomized on who you get and what run and which boons they even offer you at that point in time, you're never really going to have the exact same run twice. And that makes it just so exciting in terms of, oh, I didn't realize I could do this, right? Like I had a run where So Davin was talking to me about this kind of idea with the Hera bow, which is a bow that you can, instead of throwing your cast, you load your cast into your bow. So I had the Dionysus Trippy Fog, I loaded that into my bow, so when I shot my bow, I would shoot the trippy fog at an enemy. So it would hit them to do damage from the bow, but also it would blast out the fog. And so I would have to go and use all of my casts when I was shooting it. But also, I got a duo boon from Demeter, which meant that after the trippy cast went out, there was frozen ice on the ground, which kept dealing damage to enemies who were still standing there, as well as I had a Demeter special with my bow, which did like a super chill blast alongside a charged up special, and it was fucking destruction. Like, I walked into that final boss and just wiped the floor with him because of all this stuff stacking on top of each other. And I don't think I'm ever going to come across that again. Maybe I will if I do hundreds and hundreds of runs, but like, man,
you can kind of
so fun.
Help, there's things you can do to help you try and get a build. You maybe won't get it the exact same way, but you can take the keepsakes of specific gods to make sure that that god will spawn next for the next boon you collect. But you can never guarantee getting the right boon because each god has like 10, 12 different boons.
Yes, and there's like, I think this is the other smart thing about the game, right, is the list of fated prophecies, which is basically a quest kind of achievement log almost, of if you go out of your way to take stuff that you haven't used before, it will get ticked off a list, and then when you go back to the House of Hades, you will sometimes have finished that, and then you get 150 gems, or you get 4 diamonds, or you get some Titan's blood. I got 6 or 8 Titans, no, I think it was 10. I got 10 Titan's blood for beating the game with all 6 weapons. Which when I saw that on the list, I was like, when I first started playing the game, I was like, I'm never going to beat the game with all the weapons. That's stupid. And now I'm here having beaten the game 8 times, having done it twice with the spear, twice with the bow, and once with each other weapon. And I don't want to stop. So like looking at that list of, you have to escape having used all the alternate versions of the mirror as well as the standard versions of the mirror, and then you'll get a bunch of this stuff. Like, I'm looking at all these things and I'm like, well, this is definitely a roadmap if I wanted to just keep playing this game, which these types of games, right, they're endless. Roguelikes, roguelites, whatever you want to call them, they definitely have points at which you can stop, but I think there is motivation here because once you finish the game, or beat it, clear it for that first time, that's kind of just the start of another story in some senses, right? Like, there's a thing that you find out, or you go somewhere and you're like, oh, and then you have to do it 9 more times in order to kind of close out that arc. And there are more kind of cutscene-like, all like interactive, like bits in the past that you play through after that point. Like, it feels very much like the story isn't done. And that is also emphasized by the fact that credits haven't rolled yet, and I don't think they roll until you beat the game 10 times. So yeah, I feel like it is still fresh for me, and that's the thing that is keeping me going, is every time I roll in, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use a different weapon aspect, or I'm going to try and change up the Pact of Punishment to make it so that enemies have 15% more health this time, because then I'll unlock more Titan's blood and more diamonds and all this stuff, and it all feeds into itself. Everything you do in the game has progression, and that is what is so satisfying about it.
I think the game could have even 2 or 3 elements of like less progression. What I mean by that is I don't think it needs the weapon aspects or the log that you were talking about. I think it would be a fine, infinite, enjoyable game without those things. I think it's just like almost the extra cherry on top to make it even more enticing to play more, because I had one run with one of the aspects. It was the shield, and it basically turns your throwing shield into a very slow, large, spinning wheel of doom, essentially.
It's kind of like Electo's blades on the ground, right? It just kind of sits there and just shreds through people.
Yeah, right. And I basically put Ares's doom spin on my thing. And this was quite early on. I hadn't beaten the game at this stage, and when you recall your shield, it'll just like come towards you, but you can just keep running away from it. So you can just throw your shield out, return it to you, and then just keep running around enemies, and it's just this doom wheel behind you just trailing along, damaging all the enemies, and they're all getting doom damage. So
shit, dude, I can feel like with Hermes, what if you get the fast running speed from Hermes alongside like extra dashes from Hermes, and you can just keep going infinitely without it returning to you, because it doesn't return to you that fast, does it?
No, it just keeps going. And I must say, like, the one time I did beat the game was with the shield, and I basically massively boosted the special to be Zeus's thunder, and had the extra jolt damage and had the extra chance of double damage. And then I sped up the special using like the hammers, so it was like a really fast just special attack on top of Demeter's like incredible cast, which I'm crutching on way too much these days, which is basically a laser beam going straight into the enemy, and I got the laser beam to home in on the enemy on top of that, and it's just like, this is ridiculous. So that's the one time I beat the game. I feel like I broke the game to beat it, so I'd like to beat the game a bit more fairly, perhaps.
Yeah, no, that I definitely feel that. There have been a couple of builds where I've beaten it where I'm like, this is just broken as hell. Like, I just completely whitewashed the final boss, and it wasn't even a contest. But there are, even at this point, right, like, every time I get there, my heart is fucking pumping out my chest. There is something about that final fight that is just really intense, no matter what. Even if you have full death defies, even if you roll in there with a great build, you're still like, okay, I still need to focus here. I still need to make sure I'm concentrating.
Just because the attacks do so much damage to you that just one lapse of focus and you can really be hurting.
Yes. I really like Athena's bronze skin ability, which just reduces incoming damage. So you take less damage, and if you get like the epic version of that.
It's a bit boring for you compared to what you've been describing with the...
Oh, for sure. No, it is boring, but it's just really good survivability. And, you know, I do like those survivability boons. Strong Drink is another good one from Dionysus, which means every time you find a fountain, it will fully heal you, plus give you an extra 4% damage. And I got that early on in a run, and by the end I had plus 20% base damage. So it was just... I was never worried. Like, you know, you're worried when you're fighting Theseus and the Minotaur that you're going to take too much damage, and that means that when you come out of the room, you won't fill up super high on the fountain. Whereas, like, you can kind of be a bit more lax about that fight, and then you can roll out with 2 HP and you'll back up to full again just because of Strong Drink.
I mean, I'm just trying to avoid using a Death Defy on them, honestly. Like,
I've
rarely gotten out of that fight without using a Death. I think I've done it once or twice without using a Death Defy.
I generally do it without using one. For the most I'll lose now is 1 Death Defy on them, but for the most part I can do them without doing it. You have to focus the Minotaur first, right? Asterius is much easier to just take down versus Theseus and his stupid ass shield. The other annoying thing is, and this happened on my broken run, is I was doing damage to them so fucking fast because they were both clumped together that I basically took off half their health bars at once very quickly, which meant that Theseus went into his god mode thing where he calls down a boon from a god that you don't have at that current time.
Do we know why he gets boons? Is there a plot reason?
I don't know. He's a mortal as well, right? Technically, even though, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Zagreus points out, the gods are working for him as well, like early on, and I thought, this is interesting. It's leading to like some reason why Theseus gets boons, and it never really
I wonder if that gets revealed at some point in time, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems against the theme of the story, but at the same time, the fact that the gods get upset with you when you have those rooms with double boons, and you take 1 boon and then the god that represents the other boon starts attacking you feels a bit much. Like, they are very jealous of each other.
Yeah, and that's the Greek gods, right? Like, there is this infighting, this kind of like superiority complex between them. There's incestuousness. There's like all that stuff. And, you know, I studied classics at school and a bit at university. I didn't, you know, back then it was much more like, you know, language stuff and more about history and like stuff like that versus mythology. But when I was younger, I used to listen to audiobooks all the time about the Greek gods and mythology and all that stuff. So I know a lot of stuff, right? Like, some people might consider it a spoiler that Demeter is the mother of Persephone, right? But that's Greek mythology, you know? And so it's interesting where stuff like that gets revealed, and I'm like, well, yeah, I know that's myth. It makes a weird thing in terms of what is a spoiler for Hades, because if you don't know Greek mythology, then you don't know that stuff. But it's also like, you know, when people talk about spoilers for historical movies, my sister gets annoyed by that as well, and I'm always like, well, it's history, right? You can't spoil history. It's existed, and it's happened. So, but anyway, you know, it's one of those things where I think because we all have this base knowledge of like to some degree, everyone knows who Zeus is, right? And so you have this ideal in your head for who is Zeus. But the way they put a twist on that, and even sometimes the way the dialogue works is Zeus just randomly, when I picked up one of his boons, was like, hey, Zagreus, I can you talk to your dad for me and, like, tell him that, I feel bad and, I forgive him and stuff like that, and can we patch things up? And I was like, okay, that just seems like dialogue out of the blue. The next time I talk to Hades, Zagreus brings up that random thing that I got just because I picked up a Zeus boon and has a whole conversation with Hades about it. And I think the care and level of detail with all the narrative stuff going on in this game is kind of mind-blowing, because it feels so natural that, like, yes, the characters would react in this way and respond to things that have happened, but obviously Supergiant has to write all that shit, right? Like, Greg Kasavin has to put hundreds of thousands of lines of dialogue into this game.
Apparently, some podcast said there's like 400,000 lines or something in this game.
Yes, yeah, it's a lot.
Mind-blowing.
Which means, like, you can play this game for hundreds of runs and barely see any repetition in it, because it's been built, and I wonder if that's part of the early access thing of over time that they've been able to do that. It's crazy to me. This game it's a miracle, man. This game is fucking insane. I didn't, when you talk about stuff that is mechanically satisfying to me, the type of games I really enjoy, top-down action is never in that conversation. Ever. I never look at those types of games and I'm like, I really want to play one of those. But Hades feels so fucking good. It is
like dungeon crawling in that sense of rooms with enemies, nuclear enemies, and you progress has never been something I've been like, that's interesting to me. And when the first time I picked up this game, the weirdest thing I thought what felt weird was there's no jump button. I was like, why are we top down? And then as you play it more, you're like, okay, well, no, it makes sense. There's no jump button here, I guess. Fine, whatever. But it just kind of like, this is more or less my first dungeon crawling game, on top of the fact that it's like, roguelite and all these other aspects added. And yeah, it comes together so incredibly well. And one of the biggest surprises of the year, I think, for me personally, although I know it was kind of on your radar.
Yes, but the thing is, right, like, I had watched all the no-clip stuff about Hades. I've played Bastion in the past. I kind of bounced off Bastion. It was okay. I've never played Transistor, and I've never played Pyre, but I respect the artistry in those games. And I intend now, having played Hades, to go back and play those other Supergiant games, just because, I think I probably owe it to myself to do that at this point in time. But it just, looking from the outside in, as you said, like, it's not the type of game I usually go in for. And so that's the real surprise of it, is that it takes this genre that I am traditionally not caring about and turns me around completely on it. And that's the fun thing about, branching out and trying things that you didn't think you would like before, because sometimes it turns around and becomes your new favorite thing. It's crazy.
And I think this game has made such big waves that I have heard a lot of people who aren't into the style of game giving it a go and being very impressed by it. And that certainly was my kind of attitude going in. And it's really nice. A really good feeling.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about Hades later on in the year. But yeah. Bally, you've been playing some other stuff as well.
I've been playing some other things. So I played a game called Minit, which I think came out, was it last year or a couple of years ago?
I think it's a couple of years ago now, Minit came out,
A couple of years ago. So this game's on Switch, it's on everything. I played it on Game Pass. And in Minit, it's another roguelite, a very short one. I think you can beat the game.
Don't know, would I call it a roguelike or a roguelite? Because I think it's more a linear game that kills you every minute, right? It's a bit weird to kind of put in a box, because it's kind of like a Zelda puzzle game, action game to some degree, also like trading quest kind of adventure style thing. It's just kind of the gimmick is you die.
There's rogue elements, certainly. The whole killing and restarting is roguish, I get that, but
you keep progression on certain things, right? If you find items and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's progression. You keep items, you keep unlocks, you keep like where your home is, but you're essentially progressing like this very woven, intertwined kind of adventure story, as it were. And yeah, you die every 60 seconds. You start in your house, and essentially you progress things like you get a new weapon, or you unlock like a bridge to somewhere or something, and most of those things stay in place when you die. You can also just kill yourself instantly if you want to, like, because you can basically achieve one thing each run, and then so if you've already achieved your one thing, you might as well kill yourself, kind of thing. So
yeah,
you restart. It's a very like plain black and white style and like a very quirky art design. Like you're playing as like this character that looks a bit like a duck. Like
it kind of reminds me of the stupid quackers from Sunshine in some sense.
You are playing as a cataquack from Super Mario Sunshine in black and white, and yeah, so you're collecting like a key for a lighthouse that leads to this person, and the person gives you something else that leads to this thing. And I think the first maybe half an hour, 45 minutes of the game felt really strong to me. I felt really much like, this is cool. I'm gaining this thing. I'm unlocking. I'm in the desert now. I defeated this boss to get this power up that leads me to this. And I basically gradually mapped out the whole world. It's a fairly small world. And then I just kind of got stuck. And maybe after about an hour and 15 minutes, I was kind of like, there's a handful of loose ends, but I don't feel like I have the tools to progress those loose ends. And I really kind of got stuck with some aspects. And I think
there's definitely one point where you need to go around to multiple people to get a thing, I remember. And there's a guy who's like underwater in a pond, and like getting that guy, I didn't realize how to activate him.
Yeah, he just wouldn't come up for me. It's just like, so there's aspects that are tricky, but then even after that, I felt there was stuff with the end game in particular where a number of things basically come to a point, I think, in one specific area of the game. And I just think some of the telegraphing on what you're meant to do in that area could have been stronger. And I'd even hint that maybe the fact that it is such a bold black and white art style maybe hindered the game slightly in that, where basically something you have to destroy, and I was like, I didn't even realize you could destroy that. And I think
the interactable stuff and how clear that is.
I don't want to be harsh and say if the game was in color, it'd be clear that that's the thing you're meant to destroy. But I do think that partly because the game was in black and white, it felt very obtuse to try and work out that was what you were meant to do. But up until that point and all the things I was discovering, I was like very impressed by this game. Like, I think it's a really fun, cool take on, I know it's not a roguelite like we were saying about the roguish elements. The restarting idea works really well, and that's really. I
think the clever thing about it, right, is that you can change your start point. So when you find a new quote unquote home base, you don't have to start from the first area again, because the size of the game is large enough to where you can't cross the entire place in a minute. It's just not feasible.
No. And there's like some teleporting stuff that goes on later. And yeah, it's really cool in that sense. It's a very well-designed game. I just think that maybe there's just a couple of obtuse areas. But I'm super glad to have played it. I think it's a really neat idea. And I'd say if it's on sale on Switch anytime, and I think it is a pretty cheap game, it's worth giving a shot. It's cool. It's a single sitting game, a really decent single sitting game.
It's and also like getting bogged down at the end is like relative because the whole game takes an hour and a half to finish, right?
Exactly. So, I have no qualms with getting frustrated or stuck on shorter games because I just look it up, I find the solution, and then all of a sudden I've beaten the game, and it's like I don't mind playing games I'm not 10 out of 10 on, especially when they're under 2 hours. Like, it's totally cool. Another game I've been playing, and this has been over the course of quite a while, and this is The Walking Dead Season 1. So this came out way back in 2012, but it is now on Switch, like a million other things. And again, I played this game through Game Pass. It's 5 chapters telling the tale of mainly 2 characters, Clementine and Lee, but there's a series of other characters, and it's them basically surviving and getting through a zombie apocalypse. I guess it was one of the original kind of like this was like before zombies became a massive trope, I feel.
I mean, zombies have been a trope for a while, I think, but the Walking Dead comic originally, probably one of the big early kind of influences on that genre in the modern era, but you know, it was spun off into the big TV show, which I think is, I don't know if that still is around anymore.
It's still going somehow, but it's one of the
from what I've heard from people, from what people talk about this franchise's property, the game is one of the strongest things in its arsenal across all,
especially season 1.
Yes, especially season 1. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a blast playing this game. I played it through with Caroline, and we've obviously come off the back of playing Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 both this year. So somehow I've played 3 zombie games in 2020, which just blows my mind.
Bally, what's happening to you? What is wrong with you?
Talk about trying new experiences. But I really love some of the things this game is doing. Like, there are some aspects that feel quite dated, like some of the way that character models move can be like very puppet-like, and a kind of, animation in video games has definitely come on a long way, I'll just say.
It's kind of stilted, right? And Telltale certainly had that style with all of their games, and a lot of people were talking about, when is Telltale going to change their engine? When are they going to come into the modern era? And especially, like, we talked about Tell Me Why on the Patreon show.
Yes.
How that game has taken this genre and has just, like, elevated it production-wise and all that stuff.
Totally. And playing them side by side, it is very clear to see how that genre has taken off and evolved. But that's not to say Walking Dead just does some awesome things. Like, I think the most unique thing it does, and especially when you compare it to another zombie apocalypse world like Last of Us or something, is being forced to make narrative decisions in a short space of time. So stuff will happen that is action related, and then it'll say, do you go with this character or this character? Do you save this person or this person? And there's like this timed thing that you're being timed essentially 10 seconds to 0 to make a huge decision that's going to affect the story and impact these people's lives. And I love that about this game. It's the perfect way of creating narrative tension through a video game. Like, it's something I don't think you could achieve through watching The Walking Dead, for example, on telly, or reading the comic. And we've talked about how Last of Us creates that tension in other ways. But I think what's unique to Walking Dead is this clear, pick this or pick this, do this or do that. How are you going to do this? And a lot of those decisions, they don't put a time pressure on, and those are fine. But I think it's the moments and crucial, like, narrative plot points where you're forced to make the big decisions that I think created some of the most successful chapters in the season, I should say. And, like, it was really cool. Each chapter I felt was almost like a story in and of themselves, especially like chapter 2, for example. I know your favorite was chapter 3. My personal favorite was chapter 4. And, like, I think chapter 5, like, has its own kind of moments, but I think is generally a bit weaker, and
it's more of like a wrap up, really.
Yeah, it's a way of just wrapping up. But, like, it's interesting to see how the genres come on. But I'm so glad to have played, like, one of the original, narrative Telltale games in video games, I guess, way back from 2012. Like, it's I don't know how well it would run on Switch, but it's definitely worth giving a shot. Again, if it's on sale, I'd highly recommend, but maybe not full price. I don't know. Like, I had a really good time with it and would highly recommend. Yeah, Walking Dead Season 1.
Yeah, I think when I played it back then, it had a big impact. And this is kind of similar to Journey, right? Like, where you're playing a bunch of these games that I played when they came out at the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like Journey probably hit similarly to when it hit me, and maybe Walking Dead a little less so, just because you've gone through stuff like Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, but still probably, narratively, I think still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game has a really special place alongside Last of Us. Like, I think that obviously there are aspects that overlap, but I think generally it's doing a very different thing in its own really cool way, which I think is, I wouldn't say don't play this game just because you've played Last of Us or vice versa, to be honest. I think they do enough different things that it's interesting.
Great.
Cool.
Okay. Well, Bally, let's close out this segment with Genshin Impact.
Another game that was just completely off my radar.
I mean, fuck, man. So I've known about this game for a while because of the Breath of the Wild comparisons that have been happening. It was like maybe either early this year or late last year where trailers were floating around for this thing, and I was like, that's a fucking ripoff if I've ever seen one. And so this game is coming to Switch this year, I believe, at some point. Not on it yet. I wonder how it's going to run because it's real chunky on PS4. I've tried it on PS4, mainly played it on PC though, where it runs beautifully. I don't know where to start with Genshin Impact, Bally. It's just a fucking disaster and beauful.
You've not spent any money on it, which I think is a success.
No, which is good.
But you want
right?
to, you're about to say.
Okay, so let's try and boil that. So Genshin Impact is from Chinese developer Miyoho Games, and they have made a anime single player with co-op Breath of the Wild style action RPG with gacha mechanics that has vibes of Dragon Quest and also daily quests and MMO feels, but also the joy of discovery Breath of the Wild. It's just all these things, and it is a lot. Let me tell you, this is a game that engages Bally panic mode, right? If you think that Grounded made you panicky, if you thought that Sea of Thieves...
Does it have a tutorial?
Kind of.
Kind
yes.
of is not good enough for me. I need a clear, defined tutorial. That's what I like.
It's kind of like it will pop up, hold this button and press this button, and it'll pop up like a little picture, and it'll say below, like, oh, by the way, if you mix electric and fire damage, it will cause overcharge, and that will do more damage to enemies if you string it together, things like this. So there's elemental things going on here, chemical reactions, one might say, similar to what happens in Breath of the Wild, but that's mainly in combat.
Cool.
So, what I'm here to say is that I can't stop fucking playing this game alongside Hades. It's got its hooks in me. And I think part of it is it has the beauty and the serenity and the kind of... The music is kind of Dragon Quest-y to some degree, but also does have that sparsity that Breath of the Wild kind of goes for, where you're exploring the open wilderness and there's not a huge amount of... There's like
piano plinky plonks here
yeah,
and there,
like
but
trills here and things
nature
there and the sound of the wind and the kind of breeze going by and those sorts of things. There's a real stark beauty and elegance to the world that comes across instantly, I would say. And your mileage...
Does it feel as solid as Breath of the Wild? Breath of the Wild feels very like... There's no rough edges, you know? Does this feel...
Yes.
Finished in that way?
There is a sheen and a polish to it, for sure. Like, really nice animation. In some senses, like the climbing animation, because, of course, it's the same as Breath of the Wild. You climb, you glide. That's kind of your main traversal. And the climbing animation is, like, literally the same. Like, ripped straight from that game. It even does the same thing of like picking up ingredients on the ground or like bugs or enemies. It's just a one button click and a little sound effect and it just goes into your inventory.
Do you think
right?
Nintendo lawyers right now are trying to look for legal
no
ground to have a
no
go
and I think that's the dangerous thing, right? Because I don't like this idea of you cannot copyright game mechanics. That just inhibits creativity, it inhibits like the ability for iteration. That's just bad. I
True.
very much
I'm talking
that.
about like specific animations you can probably copyright.
Well, the thing is, they're not like taking code from Breath of the Wild. They're just replicating what they've seen. Like, it's not exactly the same, right? Anyway, where was I? I don't fucking... There's so many things to kind of dig into here. The beauty of the game, the kind of vibe of it, your mileage may vary just because it's really fucking anime. There's this character called Paimon who's like next to you your whole time. She's like a little fairy lady. She floats in the sky. She has a scarf that shows like the cosmic universe. Like it's kind of riffling around her neck and there's stars and stuff floating around. And anyway, she's just basically the most annoying anime character you can ever imagine. Like, hey, it's me, Paimon! Paimon! We can go and have fun in this adventure! You know, that very high-pitched, very, very Navi-esque, right, in some senses. I'm kind of okay with that. It kind of, like, water off my back, kind of rolls. I've seen enough anime at this point to be like, whatever, this is a character that exists. I know there will be people out there who that will drive up the fucking wall, so I'm just going to put that out there as a warning. Paimon is here, and Paimon is here to stay. However, the writing and the dialogue around Paimon is very funny because your character will often... So the other weird thing, your character is a mute, but in the first cutscene, your character speaks. So I don't know what's going on there. There's voice acting for your character, but then they don't talk ever again. And when you're talking to other characters, you choose dialogue options. It's weird. But all the other characters speak. There's lots of voice acting in the game. It has more of a traditional story in terms of you're following quest lines. You're not kind of doing this non-linear thing. So you are going down a path and talking to different characters. But anyway, the dialogue's really funny because it's all about like... It's just very quippy and... talking like in a way that feels, I don't know, like reverential, like the idea that you keep coming back to this thing about Paimon, you're going to eat Paimon, and Paimon is delicious food, and there's lots of memes going around Twitter of Paimon in rice and stuff like that. It's just, it's doing the meme thing kind of well in terms of its writing aspect, but yeah, you kind of like meet this cast of characters, and the main difference I would say like is combat wise and mechanics wise, where there's no breakable weapons. You have these different characters who you can get, yes, by doing a gacha thing where you go into the wish menu and you do your 10 wishes and you will get a new character, and each character has an element associated with them, whether it's fire or wind or ice or water. All of them will come with that one element, and that will be the kind of special move they have will be associated with that. And so mixing these together, so like if you freeze an enemy with Kaya, who's an ice guy, and then you use Diluc, who is a fire guy, to use fire on them, you'll do way more damage because those elements are interacting with each other. Same with electric and fire, same with water and fire. They all have different effects, and they will all just make combat much easier for you. You'll do more damage over time and stuff like that. So each of these characters you can get from those pulls, but the game does give you 4 free characters just as a part of playing through the story, so you'll have a full roster. And it's interesting because when you're fighting enemies, you're constantly switching on the D-pad between these characters, and there's a slight cooldown when you switch from one to the other, but for the most part, you want to play this game where, like, you have your bow person, you have your heavy weapon person, you have your regular sword guy, and you're just constantly switching between them because you want to pop an ice spell on this guy and then switch to the fire very fast. So it's much more frantic, it's much more actiony. There's not really a dodge button, there is a dash, so you do have kind of leeway in terms of getting out of the way of enemies. But
all the enemies big JRPG style things tanks that take a lot of damage, and you're running around them attacking.
For sure, numbers are popping off, man. Numbers are popping. You're seeing them in the air. Love those numbers. Gotta love them. There are giant slimes that just look like Dragon Quest slimes, right? Like, there's influences like worn right, not even on the sleeve, like fucking tattooed into the skin of Genshin Impact is what's happening here with its influences. And so
are there shrines?
Kind of. There's like dungeons, right? There's like mini dungeons that you find, and they're gated by level. Oh god, let's get into leveling. So you level up your characters either by fighting enemies, or you pick up these items which you go into the menu and you feed them to your characters. They're like books, and then you use the books.
Sure,
and
this
the
isn't
books.
a JRPG with action elements.
It is. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Like, it is a JRPG, but it's a free-to-play The other thing, right, that I haven't even mentioned, this game's free. Just download it. Like, just go whatever thing you have. It's on phones, for fuck's sake. You can play it on a mobile device. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but apparently it runs really well, and there's cross-play between PC and mobile. Anyway, and this, I think you can tell about it. I've gone down 7 different tangents talking about this game because there is just so much going on, and it's really hard to kind of like put it down into one bucket because it isn't. It's just all these different things. And like the weird thing is that it works, right? Like the character leveling feels weird, but then you feed your guy a bunch of books and he's level 30 now and he does a bunch of damage. There's also an adventure level, and I think this is where the game actually is at its strong. The part of the game where it's at its strongest is where I am just wandering around and I see a weird little kind of spirit thing, and the spirit thing's like floating on top of a tree, and I'm like, all right, how do I get up to that tree? All right, I'll try and climb up here, and then I can like float down with my glider and catch it, and then it will start moving towards another area, and you're like, oh, okay, now it's up over there. I need to platform my way, climb all the way up there to the top, hit it again, and then it's going to go down into the ground and find its final resting spot, and it will kind of go into this little statue, and a chest will open. And when you open that chest, you get experience points for your adventure level. Your adventure level kind of encompasses your entire party. It's like your main progression through the world. And no matter what you do, doing main quests, side quests, finding chests, fighting enemies, your adventure level is the one thing that always progresses, keeps getting bigger and bigger. And you're always rewarded for that, right? Every time you gain a rank, you go back to the main town and you can get rewards for doing that. And but the thing that ties into this is it does have all those mini little puzzles that Breath of the Wild does. It has like, oh, there are these weird rock formations. What if I just hit 3 of these? Oh, a chest appeared. Great, I got some stuff. There are 4 carrots in the ground. Let's pick up these 4 carrots. Oh, because I got the carrots, a chest appeared out of nowhere. There are mini challenges, like you go over to this challenge area, it'll be like, okay, glide through these 3 rings and then collect this thing in the sky. Boom, you got a little thing, and it added to it. There are these things called animunculus, which remind me of Infamous, the shards in Infamous 1 and 2, where they're just littered all around the map, and by finding them, you can then spend them at a statue to increase your stamina gauge. So I'm looking on the map all the time to be like, oh shit, there's an animunculus in the sky. How do I get over there? There are like little wind sprites that move around on the ground, and you have to walk from one to the second one to the third one. And when you get to the third one, it will push up a kind of gust of wind in the air, and you jump on your glider and you glide up into the sky. All these tiny little exploration details and like the joy of discovery and finding places and getting rewarded for finding that stuff is fucking here in this game, and they almost do it as good as Breath of the Wild. It's crazy to me that this game has achieved that. It is ridiculous, but yet also it's this weird action RPG, and also it has gacha mechanics, and also it has the vibes of Dragon Quest, and it's not even finished because there's a prologue that you're playing through, and then when you finish the prologue, there'll be another area you go to, and they're going to have like 7 chapters, and it's going to be released kind of like on a schedule, so you could say it's in early access to some degree because the full thing isn't finished. Bally, I probably sound like a fucking raving lunatic this entire however long I've been talking about this game. What I will say is just try it for yourself, and I think when it comes out on Switch, hopefully that will have cross-play as well, and cross-progression, so I won't have to start again from my PC file. Sony don't have that, but I think that's because Sony are being weird as usual. And I hope it runs well on Switch, because it has that kind of art style where, similar to Breath of the Wild, it's obviously a lot crisper, a lot sharper, but I like it a lot. Yeah. And I don't understand.
Definitely sounds like giving a go as it's free, you know, like it's no investment.
Yes.
And
there's no barrier to entry.
Talking about the story, and there's like going to be chapters or something like so.
Yes.
Is there a finite point you can get to at this point in time that you're working towards?
I believe so, yeah. There's an end to the story content. So I'm kind of at the end of the prologue now, and I'm kind of going to the area where I think I'm going to face a boss, and when I fight that boss, then I think that section will end, and then it'll go into Act 1, but I don't actually know how much of Act 1 is available at this point in time. I know there's a whole region of the map that I haven't even explored yet that I want to get to, because that's the best part of this game, is doing the Breath of the Wild stuff, running around, climbing on things, exploring, you know how it works. And I think that's the thing to say, right, is there is a pure magic and bliss and awe and wonder to Breath of the Wild, because this game doesn't have the kind of look into the distance, oh, I want to go there and see that. To some degree it does with like the red lighting for teleport stations and those types of things, but not in the same way of like a giant ruined collapsed area or a kind of guardian field of dead guardians, those types of things that drew your eye, or even the giant statues in the desert, right? There is a sense of magic and like unbelievable nature to Breath of the Wild, where this game doesn't have that feeling for me, but it still feels really good, you know? Like, yeah. I would say that the mechanics of the Breath of the Wild stand up, but when I think about Breath of the Wild, it's not those mechanics that make it the special game that it is. And I've been trying to like figure out like, why is it that this game doesn't feel like Breath of the Wild? And part of it is that I think it is just this almost nameless, like, you can't even put your finger on it type of deal with that game that this doesn't capture, just because it's not kind of going for it in the same way. It's like taking the mechanics but without the sauce, you know? It's like, you know, a recipe but there's a secret ingredient, and you can try and figure that out, but it's almost impossible to do so. And until you have that, until you know what that secret ingredient is, you're never going to create the same greatness that the other thing was, you know?
Right. Cool.
So, yes. Anyway, Genshin Impact, it's a fucking thing. I hope any of what I said made any sense. I don't know if it did. But I'm playing a lot of it. And, you know, it has daily quests as well, so you're going in there daily, you're collecting your dailies. And I think we should just talk about the free-to-play elements of, like, yes, you can pay money to get characters. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're gonna get.
So what if you start with money characters you don't like? Are you just stuck with them for the rest of the experience?
I mean, they work.
You get free rolls.
You do. So I've done my free rolls, and that's why I have some of the best characters, because I got lucky. So I got a 5-star D-Look, who's like the best character in the game.
Can you unlock more free rolls without paying money?
Probably over time. Like, it feels like Fire Emblem Heroes, where they'll just give you a bunch of orbs at some point and be like, here you go. It's a celebrate. I don't know. It's celebrating Slime Day. Slime Day today. Let's give you 10 rolls, basically. Type of deal. I think that's probably going to happen at some point in the future, but I think at the moment, just because they have so many people joining the game and stuff like that and hitting big numbers, they're giving a lot of stuff away for free, and that seems to be what people have said the way gacha games get you is they get you in the door with all these free rolls and these great things, and you're making so much progress. Eventually, probably, you'll start to hit a wall, and I'm a little worried about that. I do hope that the story content is just finishable without having to hit any of those walls, but we'll see. I might have to check in the future with Genshin and tell you how it's going. But
awesome.
For now, I love it. It's great. Have a great time. And also, I think this is another weird point. Immortals Phoenix Rising is coming out in December, and I'm like, boy, I don't know how that's going to do now that Genshin Impact is here and it's free. You know? Like, are you going to put £70 down for a PS5 version of Immortals, Gods, and Monsters, Phoenix Rising, fucking whatever the hell that name is? Because I don't know, it's kind of looks like it's doing the Breath of the Wild thing, but Genshin is also doing it maybe better. I don't know yet. We don't know. It's weird. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Cool. We'll take a break here. We'll come back after it, and we'll talk about Super Mario 64. Your thoughts, our thoughts, everyone's thoughts. Don't go anywhere. We shall be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back to the second half of the show. It's time to celebrate Mario Bally. You know, this small little plumber boy, he hasn't had his just desserts yet. You know, he's been around for 35 years and no one's really given him his due. So we're here to do that with our celebration of Mario, to someone will finally, talk about Mario in a positive way.
He's so underrated, Mario. Not many people have heard of him.
No, he's a very kind of like obscure video game character. And we're celebrating Mario with all the 3D collection, and we're kicking it off today with Super Mario 64 Bally. Let's start here. What's your history with Super Mario 64? Do you remember the first time you ever played Super Mario 64? What do you recall from it as a child?
Out of all the sort of friends who owned N64s, which when we were growing up genuinely wasn't many, I don't remember any of them playing Mario 64. If they did, I was never there when they played it. So I have no memory of playing it originally or even seeing it being played originally. And genuinely, the first time I played it was Mario 64 on the Nintendo DS on the launch. So that was in 2005.
Yes. And do you remember before that came out, because we were reading Nintendo official magazine as it was back then, and originally the DS version was called Mario 64 X4, like Mario 64 by 4, in terms of it was supposed to be a 4-player multiplayer version of Mario 64, and then it turned out that wasn't actually what it was just that you had these 4 playable characters to go through the castle with in Mario 64.
Yeah, and there's some really good things about that game that the original version doesn't have, like there's extra stars, the 4 different playable characters. There's actually a camera that will align behind your character by pressing the L button. And there's loads of great stuff about that game. Obviously, the D-pad was a huge drawback, but in my mind in 2005, I didn't care about that sort of thing. I wasn't like overly fussy about controls back then. And for me, even coming off of Super Mario Sunshine that I'd played a couple of years beforehand, it still felt like a really good, solid, modern Mario game.
For sure, yeah, and it was at the launch of the DS, right? So it was like day one. That was the main thing that we had to play, aside from WarioWare Touched, of course, our favorite. But yeah, I also played it for the first time on DS. However, I have this really hazy memory of being at one of my sister's friends' houses, and her older brothers had an N64 with Mario 64 on it. So I played it for all of, I think, 20 minutes to half an hour, not really understanding anything that was going on, not really knowing how to use an N64 controller, but I have this very hazy memory of like trying to move Mario around a castle and jumping in things and stuff like that. So technically, yes, I have held a N64 controller and played Mario 64 years and years ago, but literally it's one of the haziest memories I have. I think it's one of those things that in hindsight I was like, oh, when I went to that place back then, that's what I was doing. I was playing Mario 64, because at the time I didn't know what it was or what was going on at all.
Is your memory hazy, or are you just referring to the game's visuals?
Yeah, I'm talking about Hazy Mazy Cavey, our favourite.
There's a lot of haziness in Mario 64.
There's a good amount of haziness for sure, yeah. So yes, and we played it then on the DS, and the DS version was fun. I think the other thing about the DS version has updated character models, so Mario looks more in line with, I guess, that
Mario
period of
Party
time.
Mario?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Or like the Bowser model is updated to reflect the modern look that Bowser had, because the Bowser in this game is just ridiculous. His giant head and the way he looks is nothing like Bowser is represented in Mario media these days, whereas that Bowser was much more of a early 2000s Bowser, which kind of looks similar to how Bowser is portrayed today. Bowser hasn't changed a huge amount since they kind of clarified his look back then. So yeah, I really liked it as well back then, and we both finished it, and I don't think we both got 150 stars. I got 120 or so. So yeah, and there were lots of bonus ones.
Yeah, I want to say I was up at like 80 or 90. I don't think I got quite as high as 120. I don't know.
Yes, and I was watching a bit of the DS version recently, because Dan of Project Falcon Punch was streaming some of it, and he went into one of the extra stars, and it was one of those arenas that was actually used for a multiplayer mode that I remember us playing a good amount of. You would run around the small area and you would try and collect silver stars, or try and like make one gold star out of them, and it was basically a race between the two players, or however many, 4 players to get that stuff, which I guess is where the 64x4 multiplayer stuff got sectioned away into, was that kind of part of the game.
And obviously all the mini games with that game, which were awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Love those mini games. But anyway, let's talk about Super Mario 64 today. We both finished it. We both played it. How many stars did you get, Bally?
I finished, including the final Bowser star, on 101 stars. So
wow,
I got every single star on the 15 stages. So I got the 6 stars for all 15 stages. I did not get the 100 coin star in any stage.
Okay.
And by my maths, I think that works out at me getting like 5 or 6 of the castle stars, but it felt like more. I don't know, because I got a couple of the red coin stars on the first 2 Bowser levels, and then I got 2 stars for the slide, and I got the one with the wing cap, and I got all the stars you get from the toads. So that's already more than 5, so I don't quite understand how the maths works on that. But yeah.
Okay, weird. Well, anyway, I got 95. There were certain stages where I was like, this was fucking shit, I'm not doing this anymore, where I kind of gave up on it. Yeah,
there's some hard moments, and I just, you know me, I like to slam my head.
Oh yeah, stubborn. Bally known for his stubbornness.
I'm not leaving the stage till I beat it. I'm going to beat it.
Exactly.
So I beat it.
Great. So yeah, I kind of wanted to go through each stage and kind of talk about it as we go, but maybe let's get some kind of top level thoughts here. How do you think this game holds up generally, Bally? Like, talking about all aspects, visuals, control, music, everything. How coming out at the end of it, do you still think Mario 64 deserves to be held in high regard by people?
So I should have said on the sort of history of Mario 64, I basically, at school, there was a lost and found essentially place, and someone handed in like a Mario 64 and no one wanted it. So I said, I'll have it. So I do actually have a cartridge of Mario 64 on the N64 that I got way later in, like, I want to say 2007, 8, 9. And I tried that on my N64, and I was like, wow, this game is rough. I don't want to touch Mario 64 again. I like my DS version. I don't want to think about it. So I was, in that sense, since that was the last time I touched Mario 64 on an N64, I was very nervous about how this game would hold up, how it would feel. And I didn't think I'd come away as positively as I have come away with. And I actually think the majority of the game holds up really well. I think it's a good difficulty. I think that there are obviously some real frustrations with it, but I think it is does it hold up as like a modern classic, as in like, would it get an IGN 10 today? Definitely not. I think it would struggle to get, maybe a 7, but like, is it?
I don't know. I think it's probably like looking around that 8.5 to 9 range.
Potentially, but is it like one of these games that historically is incredibly important and all these things? I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. Like, this is this is a seminal game. It's incredibly important, and having played it recently, you really understand why it is so important. So I thought it was fantastic. I think there are some really rough spots. I think, as we've already said, it's a real shame that it's not getting a proper remake with this collection. It is very much quite a clean port, but on top of that, I do think visually it has been updated, which looks decent.
Yes.
And most of it holds up. There are some really rough patches, which I'm sure we'll get to, most notably the camera, but I'm sure we can talk about that. But I was very pleased overall.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I enjoyed myself a lot. I think even when I was dying a lot and just constantly being like, fuck, why, this sucks, this is stupid, I still kept wanting to jump into that painting and do it again. And I think it speaks to something about the snappiness of the game, right? Let me see if I can find one of these comments, but one of the comments was talking about how quickly you were able to jump into every part of the game, and how it was, it's like each star. So here we go, from PR Billy. He said, I forgot to add that levels are relatively small, which leads to less frustration when I mess up a jump or something. Most stars take about 2 to 5 minutes to get. And that is absolutely like one of the best things about this game is you can just storm through a level in like under 10 minutes basically and get all 6 stars, especially early on in those first levels. It's crazy how fast you can just blitz through the stars in this game, especially if you're good, if you know where to go for them, which helps, right? I think part of it is, just understanding what the game wants from you a lot of the time, which back then would have been
That's one of the weaker areas, I would argue, for sure. Like, I think that I loved the fact that it was so quick to get stars, and part of that was that I've dropped into this level. All I'm given is the title of the level, and you're not even given any like camera reference as to where the star is or what you have to do. And I think that's where games later like Sunshine, Galaxy, Odyssey, so on, are so much stronger in that sense, where when you're dropped into the level, especially with Sunshine and Galaxy, the camera will zoom in on an area. It might be a boss, it might be a star, or it might be like just a suggestion that you maybe need to go here because that's where you need to do something in this area to unlock the star. And this game, none of that. It just plops you in and you're given the title of the star, and you just have to work out from there, which I think is a shame, because I do actually think the technology for that camera zooming in and panning around is there in the game, because you actually see that technology when, say, you collect 6 red coins and a star appears, and then the camera will like pan to where the star is, and you get a reference of, oh, right, okay, the star is over there. It would be awesome if, when you drop into the level, other than just the title you get, say the star is at the top of a mountain, for example, like it often is in a lot of these levels. If the camera just panned and said, right, that's where your target is, that's where you need to go. And that's a very simplistic example, but there are some really complicated like things to work out what you're trying to do. And honestly, I would even want to say the majority of stars, I would just like look up a quick YouTube video of like, what on earth do you do in this level? And just like go from there, because there was just, on so many of them, there was just no way I was going to like work it out genuinely. Like, I think it is. Right. It's very obtuse,
unless of course you have the very specific knowledge. The one I think of the most is blasting into the wall, I think it is, from Womp's Fortress.
Right, that's like very specific.
It is like this kind of weird corner of this strange like textured, polygonal, kind of pointed out part of the wall, and you have to blast your cannon right up that point, and then the point explodes into smithereens, and a star is sitting there on this very weird slant. And it's like, if I didn't know that from when I was a kid and just have that memory, how, like, am I just going to be slamming Mario into walls constantly and just trying to figure out? It just, so for sure, there's definitely a level of obscurity. I mean, I wouldn't say like it's adventure game level, but it's almost like verging on that level of like, what the fuck am I supposed to do here?
Yeah,
you know?
It's like the levels are as much puzzle box dioramas as they are kind of platforming levels. They're almost like a hybrid between the two.
Yes.
And I don't think while there are really puzzly stars in games like, I think Sunshine especially, but Galaxy as well, it's always... Okay, some of them are crazy obscure in Sunshine. I'm not trying to defend that, but like it's always like a little more suggestive, especially with cameras and the titles and the way that it introduces you to the level. Whereas this game can be very obscure.
And like you said, looking up those YouTube videos, none of those pass the 2-minute mark for the most part, right?
Yeah, and I'd watch them on double speed, and I'd just like whap out my phone, type in the title of the star, play it on double speed, and I know what I've got, all this knowledge from watching a 1 minute at double speed video, and then I just jump back in the level and I'm doing it. And like that was a really fun gaming loop for me with this game. It was like I could blast through stars, as you were saying, like very quickly. I think in total it maybe even took me on the low end of 10 to 15 hours, I'd say like 10, 11 hours to even get 101 stars or whatever. Which is
I haven't checked my Switch, but it's maybe a little bit skewed because I did stream a bunch of Sunshine and Galaxy. So,
and I know you're like asking your stream for like a lot of tips and things as well. So like there's definitely that.
Yes.
Yeah,
there's that element.
You need the clues, definitely.
So according to my Switch, I played for 10 hours or more, but that's probably verging closer to the 15, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't track anything exactly, so thanks Nintendo for that. But yeah, I guess to close out my kind of overall thoughts, I actually think the visual overhaul being at 720p it just makes the game a lot more readable, right? I think part of the reason when you jumped back when you were younger into Mario 64 on the N64 is because, man, that game's fucking blurry, right? Like back then.
Yeah.
And so some of the stuff with the text that they've done, some of the stuff with just making it a crisper image of Mario,
and the titles, the lives, really nice.
All that stuff just makes it a lot more appealing and easy to kind of read everything that's going on. And then also just the movement that Mario has. I think he doesn't quite have the aerial movement that I think that Sunshine and Galaxy tend to do better, but his toolkit and his abilities, just the flexibility you have with movement generally, feels great. And it still there's an instinctive, like, mechanical joy to moving Mario in 64.
Yeah.
And despite the fact that sometimes, like, you're up against a wall and he's, like, shuffling against it, and you're like, no, turn around, and then he, like, turns to the right, and you're like, no, turn towards the camera, and then he, like, turns back, and you're like, okay, Mario. Like, they hadn't fully gotten there, but for a first run, like, it feels great, you know?
When you take the camera out of it, it really does feel near perfect in terms of, like, his movement. There is one exception, I would argue.
Okay.
Is the wall jump.
All right, yeah.
I think the wall jump feels like a 3D version of the Super Metroid wall jump, honestly. Like, it's got a weird... You've got to be... I don't know how you even explain it. You've got to be the right distance and have slid just the right amount before you attempt to jump off the wall, whereas in modern... I think from Sunshine onwards, that was very much a clear, you'd almost hear like, and visually see Mario's hand just making a noise.
Yes,
sliding
I
down
know
the
what
wall.
you mean.
It's like, right, if I can see and hear that noise, I know that I can press A again and Mario will wall jump. Whereas this game is a lot more less clear about that. Like it's a smaller window, it's a tighter window. And I'm not saying the game asks you to wall jump that much. It's quite rare, but there are a few where you definitely need it. And it's not quite as perfect, let's say, as his other movement options, which do generally feel really good.
Yeah, that's it, and it's weird because you can do a wall kick as well as opposed to a wall jump, and that's like somewhat different, isn't it? Or am I thinking of the same thing? Because you can like use his punch ability to kick on the wall as you're going into it, and that will...
Good question. I think the movement feels the same, but I think the animation might be different, like depending on when you're next to the wall, but I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Anyway, Mario punches in this game. How much did you punch when you were going through? Because I found myself never really using it.
Yeah, I mean, I do the dive and I would jump on Goombas, but I didn't ever punch a ton, honestly. And yeah, it does feel weird having that.
I think part of it is because you don't get coins, right, if you punch enemies.
Right. And they kind of replicate that with Galaxy, where if you run through an enemy, you get star bits, but if you jump on an enemy, you get coins. Like it's
right, if you spin an enemy and they die, then they explode into magical dust versus getting a health that you want. So there's a bit of strategy at play there. I mean,
you often want the star bits more than the coins, but yes.
Yes, very, very true. But yeah, so I think generally this game, still great, right? Like, I like it a lot. I still enjoyed playing through it. Even in its most annoying moments, I was like, you know what? I'm still having a good time. I'm still going to keep jumping into that painting. Yeah. No matter how many game overs I get, which again, archaic thing that we've now kind of finally, 4 games later with Odyssey, have fixed the life system. But yes. But yes.
There's some rough parts, but the majority holds up really well, and it's fun for that.
Great. Well, let's get into some details then. We're going to go through each stage in the game. I don't know how long we'll spend on each one, but I think what I would like to do is talk about each stage and then give it a ranking out of 5 stars. We can do that individually, or we can decide together on a ranking, Bally. I don't mind, but sure. But whatever we want to do.
I think we'll agree on most anyway.
Yeah, and we can go through like the type of stars, because I think there's generally, as you play this game, there's a certain type of star that keeps repeating sometimes, and then there's somewhat unique ones. We can talk about the size of the stages, their difficulty level, all that kind of stuff, and kind of come to a consensus of how we feel about these things. But before we start, I want to just talk about the castle in general, and it as a space, a place, as a hub world, a place to explore. What do you think about the castle and those kind of things? And maybe we'll kick it off with a comment from Matraya, who says, the castle is still the best overworld in any Mario game. You can practice moving Mario around if you need to, and there are quite a few secrets to uncover. Most importantly, the castle and star system gives the player the perfect amount of freedom. You can do the stages in several different orders, skip stars, or even entire levels if you don't enjoy them. I think I got 1 star from Dire Docks, but requiring more stars for the harder stages stops you from tackling something that's completely out of your skill level, such as going straight from Bob on Battlefield to TikTok Clock. I think this is far better than making you do levels in a specific order or forcing you to do all the levels up to a certain point, like Sunshine. And yeah, I echo a lot of those sentiments. The thing with Dire Docks is I thought that it was just a 1-star level that you just had to go and unlock Bowser's second stage. But then I realized, oh wait, there's a bunch of stars in here that I could actually go back to and get if I wanted to, which I was a little bit iffy about, because just water stages generally in this game, not my thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the castle, Bally?
I like it a lot. Yeah, I think it's a very simple idea. You got a basement, a middle level, and upper level, and it works. It's very quick. I mean, as bad as lives are, and the fact that you reset into the castle courtyard every time you game over, it is actually really quick to get to any star in the game, genuinely. And that you can get to anyone in under a minute, I would argue, even less than that, probably 40 seconds. And
totally. And I think that's part of the reason why they feel comfortable just dropping you outside the front of the castle after you game over, because, yeah, it's a little annoying to get back inside and get back to where you were, but there's enough speed with Mario's movement that you can get there without spending too much time.
And it's tricky because Peach's Castle is an iconic landmark in video games, and my first sighting of Peach's Castle wasn't Mario 64. It's probably like Mario Kart 64 and all these other Mario games. So just being at an iconic location that I've referenced in other games is cool. So I already have that knowledge of this is a really cool place to be, and it's a relaxing, almost like a safe space within what's otherwise quite a dangerous game generally. And so I think it works well in that sense. I think when you start comparing it to Delfino Plaza, Delfino Plaza has its own merits and drawbacks, and I don't even know which one I would prefer, but I'd probably prefer it to the Galaxy One kind of hub world.
Yeah, the Galaxy One doesn't really have anything in it, and I think that's what distinguishes it as less interesting than Sunshine and 64. Is both of those games have hub worlds with secrets in them, and you can find the weird window that you jump into to get to the secret slide, or you can go under the castle and drain the moat, and there's another secret level under there, right? There is there's this kind of meta level to the castle as its own stage almost, versus the rest of the game, which is individualized stuff that you jump into and out of.
Right. Yeah, there's like supposedly 20 stars there if you include all the... I think that probably does include like the Bowser stage, red coins and things. I don't know, but...
maybe, I'm not sure.
There's a lot in there, and there's a lot to explore, and I must admit I didn't maybe explore the castle as much as I could. I was very much focused on, want to get these stages cleared off, want to get all those stars, but...
I think part of it also is we've done that already. Like when we were kids, we probably explored the castle a lot more and tried to figure stuff out, and, finding the secret slide is one of those fun moments that I was like, oh my goodness. And it's also weird because that room is much bigger in 64DS, because it's where you go to change characters, and so it has multiple doors for the characters.
There's a lot of rooms I noticed were much bigger in the DS version, especially like at the end of slides were like often very cramped rooms in 64, but on DS they made these rooms at the end very large, so you had like options. But I don't know. Anyway, there's like some other similarities we could talk about, but the castle generally I think is great. It serves a purpose. It's nostalgic, even though I don't have that initial nostalgia, and it's a good place to be able to reference all the other paintings. Like I think the idea of jumping into paintings is a fun, cool, kind of kiddie idea that I think works so well.
Yes, it does. It's unique, and I think it's one of those things that they felt was such a hallmark of what they had created with 64 that they just did the exact same thing with Sunshine, right? Like, obviously they look different, but they are ostensibly paintings that you jump into still. Yes,
exactly.
So in terms of like the framing for the quote unquote story in this game, me and you were having a conversation recently about what is story and what is narrative framing, as I like to say, and then you call me a wanker for using the phrase narrative for framing. But like Mario doesn't have a story in 64, right? Like it is really a frame of like Peach invites you to the castle to get cake. Oh no, she disappeared because Bowser stole her, and then you finish it and it's resolved because she kisses you on the nose. Brilliant! What just masterful storytelling from Nintendo. But Maitreya writes in and talks about how the lack of story is actually really interesting, and says the Mario platformers never really have anything interesting plot-wise, so I much prefer just going straight into things after about a minute of introduction and then a fun little ending. With exception to Galaxy, I'd much rather every Mario platformer just went straight in rather than forcing a very dull and outdated plot. And yeah, I totally agree with that. For the most part, I think Mario games tend towards this. Galaxy, I did notice, takes a while to get started. It really like has a bit of a ramp up. I'm like, all right, let's just get into the game here. And Mario 64 does that. It literally pipe opens, out you jump, there's Lakitu, gives you a couple of sentences, boom, off you go, right? Like no more explanation. It's why Breath of the Wild is so good. It's like, here you are in a chamber, out you go, here's the world, bye-bye. And yeah, that I agree with for certain.
I would argue I love everything they do around Mario and Peach in Odyssey, and I think the whole like trope of we're gonna save Peach, and it's just like doesn't quite cut it in 2020, so I appreciate what they did with Odyssey in 2017 with that idea. And Mario 64, I think is not famous for having like 10 to 15 people work on it, and I'd put money that they're all men, I think that's also important to reference to this 1996 Japan.
Exactly.
So plot wise, you're right. It's I don't want a plot from Mario 64, and what it does works fine, but I'm not saying lack of a plot is necessarily a good thing, because I really love what a game like Odyssey does. As much as that's still a very thin plot, I still think it has a real character to like what it wants to do with Bowser, Mario, and Peach that is a little less cookie cutter.
Sure. I mean, you could talk about the lore of Mario 64 in terms of, like, the environmental storytelling of the castle. Like, why are these paintings here? When you go up to the final Bowser stage, why is there a bunch of Peach paintings on the right-hand side and a bunch of Bowser paintings on the left-hand side, and they're kind of, like, looking at each other, and it's this weird... I don't know, there's a lot of kind of interesting... Like, what is Bowser's weird magic that he makes all these paintings you can jump into, and I don't know what's going on. Is Bowser a wizard, Bally? This is the real details I need to know.
Bowser definitely has some magical abilities, especially when you reference, like, everything he does in Galaxy and Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
I think we have confirmed here that Bowser is in fact a wizard. So that will be canon going forward.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the first stage, Bob-omb Battlefield. I love this stage. It is simple. It is, I think, for like the size of the other ones, is actually one of the larger stages in the game. And for the first stage, it feels, I think, for a lot of people, similar to like what Hyrule Field was in Ocarina of Time. It's like, holy shit, this big open expanse that you can walk around and explore and go somewhere. I love the different types of stars in this level as well. And I think there's less generic ones here overall, in terms of you can go and get that one behind the chain chomp straight away if you know what to do. Like, just, butt smashing on that pole, chain chomp runs away, opens the gate, and there's the star. And you can get that in all of like 30 seconds, probably less than that. What do you think of just the size of Bob-omb Battlefield and the way that it kind of, gets you into the game of Mario 64?
It's a near perfect opening level, and I think it does a number of things. Yes, it does have a nice diversity of stars. I think, secondly, it's a very safe place to be generally. There's no place to fall off in this level, to my knowledge. Like, I think it might be the only stage, other than perhaps the water levels, where there's not just an area where you can either fall into a pool, a hole, or like quicksand, or off the level entirely. I think it might be the only one, and that's
you can obviously fall from a great height, which is up on the top of the mountain, but there's no endless expanse of nothingness to die in, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that works out really well, and it's simple. The music is bopping, and it works. It just does everything it needs to do as an opening level.
Yeah, for sure. It's it certainly is cool in the way that it introduces a lot of these ideas. Like, I think probably the weakest star in this stage is the red coin star, right? Because, or maybe it's the the red coins, because they're kind of in the center of the coins in the sky, and you have to shoot through the center of them.
Yeah, it is surprising that the opening stage incorporates the wing cap that you get a little later, and then I think ties at least one star behind that, but I think maybe two. I think
I do wonder if they imagined that you would have to like go through, because let's think about this, right? The Bowser stage requires 8 stars for you to access it. So I think the developers believed that you would jump into this painting, do a couple of stars, jump out, go into another one, do a couple of stars, and get those 8 stars from multiple stages.
4 stages, right?
Instead of going all the way through to like the 5th star or whatever it is in Bomb Battlefield to get those coins.
And I think young Bally would have done that. It's just video game box ticking Bally likes to get all the stars before moving on.
I think I'm thinking of it differently. It's not actually the red coins. It's a star that requires you to get the center coin from all of those ones.
I think that definitely requires the wing cap.
It does, yes. Yeah. You have to fly through them. And I think part of the problem is the visual distance that you can see in front of you, because they have to kind of disappear coins and mist them away. You can't actually see your end destination when you're shooting out of the cannon. So I remember doing this and like going back to that cannon like 10 times at least, of like, okay, I slightly adjust it upwards. I can't remember exactly where I shot it last time, so let's slightly adjust it a bit more, and then like, oh, okay, finally got through the final one and nailed it in the center.
Yeah,
which
the wing cap is not easy to use. It it looks fun. It's like, whoa, Mario's flying. It's like, he's not flying, he's gliding, first of all, and secondly, it's very hard to control, and the whole like triple jumping into it, which you don't have to do as much in this level, because I think it's encouraging you to get in the cannon to shoot in the wing cap, and then you go straight into the glide, I guess. But it just doesn't feel very easy to control, and the hitboxes on some of those red coins can feel not harsh, but just the red coins aren't very big targets to be aiming at, and it can be very difficult. I'm saying red coins. I think you just need regular coins, like you were saying. But
yes, they're the ones that are in the center of the circle of coins, up on the big floating platform where you're
really
in the
not
cannon.
That easy. And for an opening level, I know, as you said, you're meant to come back, and you have to come back because of the wing cap, but it's a bit like, ooh, this is rough.
Yes, for sure. I do like the race with Cooper the Quick. That's a fun one.
I wish there were more races in this game. I think it was only
so I didn't realize that later on there is another one in Tiny Huge Island.
Yes.
Which is one of those stages that I barely knew anything about because I never got any stars in it.
It's a really weird stage, but we can get to it. But
yeah.
But I love how that, like in Odyssey, the race was like a staple of one of the standard moons you would get in that game, and I do think, especially with the size of like the Mario 64 stages, they would work so well to have more races. Just stick Koopa in there, have a race from here to here, or race up the mountain, this sort of thing. And I would have liked to have seen more of those.
Yeah, it would be cool. I do kind of like that it's unique though, right? Because there are certain formulaic types of stars that get repeated across the game, and so for this to be a less frequent one, I think makes it stand out a bit more. It makes it a bit more unique, you know. And especially, you know, you have the first boss, which is the giant King Bob-omb, who I think as a kid I kept being like trying to throw him off the side, and that didn't work.
I think generally one area that hasn't aged as well in my mind is the boss fights.
Yes.
They're incredibly basic when you break down what you're actually doing in each fight, and luckily they are quite few and far between. I think there's maybe like 4 bosses in the whole game if you include like Bowser, Bob-omb.
There's a Wiggler one in Tall Mountain,
Wiggler,
which I'd never done before. There's the hand boss under the... obviously, Nintendo has to have a hand with eyes inside it. Boss, of course. So
straight out of Zelda.
Yeah, there are a few of them, but for the most part, they're really easy and they don't require a lot of thought or... not that... Yeah, they kind of just happen and they exist. I think one of the other weird things about this stage is you just like have a weird warp point, and this kind of exists throughout Mario 64, where you stand in a place and for some reason it just teleports you somewhere else, and there's no indication that that's what's going to happen. There's no reason that you would think you would just stand there and it would take you, but it just is there.
So random.
It's really weird, and I've never really thought about it that much because it's like one of those known secrets of the game. But it's like
there's got to be a reason behind it we just don't know. You know, like,
I think it is like a shortcut type of thing, right? Like it is if it's like if you keep falling off the mountain with King Bob-omb and you want to get back up faster, that's a way to do it. But also, when you think about it from the perspective of a new kid in 1996 playing a 3D game for their very first time, something to that level of obscurity, I don't think anyone's going to figure that out that early on, right? You only know that as a result of years and years of Mario 64 exposure and just understanding all the intricacies of this game. So these weird spots where you just stand, there's another one where you stand in a flower bed and it just teleports you to another flower bed, and it's like, what? Why? I just don't get it.
King Bob-omb fight, like you said, he throws you. He doesn't just kill you, like or throw you into the abyss. Like, and sure, you can take damage from the throw, I believe, and being thrown off the mountain.
Yes.
But it's another way of like saying we're not going to kill you straight away, but you know you need to avoid getting thrown in future in this game, otherwise you're going to die, you know, and that certainly happens later in the game. But it's nice that early on in the game it's saying we'll give you a platform for now, but look out for future.
It also serves as a tutorial for the Bowser boss fights, where you are running around in order to grab from behind and then do something different with Bowser, but still it's the same kind of base idea. And this game generally, when you think about how it was designed, like the N64 analog stick was the new thing, and it's like you can move in 3D using this thing. And so a lot of the boss fights revolve around just running in a circle, you know, and just kind of moving around in that way, which is cool. Quickly going back to the castle, there are a couple of comments we got from Toby, who sent those in and said things that he remembers not liking as a kid: lowering the water in the moat. I hate how it changed the serenity of Peach's castle exterior. And, like, I didn't really think about that, but yeah, like, it's a bit of a bummer that the water that you could swim in at the beginning just disappears and then never comes back. It would have been nice if there was a switch, or maybe I don't know if there is a way to bring it back, because I don't believe so. But
I don't believe so either.
Yeah. And one of the other secret castle ones that I don't think you mentioned, he says, catching the golden rabbit in the castle as he disappears afterwards. It was nice to see something alive in the castle that wasn't you. Toads don't count as they are clearly dead inside.
I tried so hard to catch that rabbit and gave up numerous times.
Are you kidding me?
Like,
really?
I'm sure this is a star, but I just cannot be bothered.
Wow. I did it really quickly. It wasn't, I don't know, maybe I got lucky, but the other thing is, on the DS version, there are a fuckload of rabbits in that castle.
There are loads of rabbits.
Part of why there's so many stars is they just added like 10 rabbits to the castle that you got to run around and collect. They're just a bit wild. Okay, so giving a rating, I think I'm going to give Ball and Battlefield 5 stars. Like it feels like a 5-star level to me.
I want to take one off maybe for the awkward wing cap.
Yeah,
stuff.
But I mean, as an opening level, you know, overall, I think I can forgive that just because it nails it straight away. It's a fun place to be.
I can forgive it. The bopping music will make up for it.
Great.
We can go with 5.
Womp's Fortress. Love this stage. This is the one where I want to talk about a very weird specific thing that I noticed while playing this time, which is the textures in this game make no fucking sense. You look at Womp's Fortress and you have this weird kind of concretey stuff next to red brick, next to like white paving. like none of these textures align with each other. It feels like
Did any textures align in 1996?
I don't know, but it's one of those things, right? You think about today and you're like, what if they did that with Mario Odyssey, right? Like where the thematic kind of look of a level was just random.
They brought back Whomp's Fortress to Mario Galaxy 2.
They did, and I haven't looked back at that version, but I played
that back in near the start of the podcast,
yes.
so what, like 2013, 2014 or 15 maybe,
yeah.
and that stage holds up massively mechanically. In terms of those textures, I honestly couldn't remember, and they never stood out to me, but I do think mechanically it's a fantastic stage.
Yeah, definitely. It's but that is the weird thing for me, is like, why is this so strangely put together? It really does feel like a Lego set that some kid has just taken all, like, here's his Star Wars set, here's his Ninjala set, here's the fucking Hobbit set, and they just like mashing all these different parts together that don't really cohesively work, and yet because of nostalgia,
and then we'll theme it around Thwomps because Thwomps,
right? But like because of nostalgia, we just take it for granted, and we just like think, oh right, this is what Whomp's Fortress looks like. But when you step back and think about it, it looks so weird. Like none of these textures make sense together. They're so illogical. So yeah, that just really stood out to me as like, okay, I don't know why this looks like this, but it does, I guess.
What I love about this stage is it genuinely feels like the next step from Bob-omb Battlefield. And what I mean by that is they're now inserting, platforming. Here are some jumps that you have to make, and this leads to here. But then at the same time, while there are risks and you can fall off, underneath the main platforming areas, they just have that slidey down wall that basically slides you to safety.
Yes.
So again, it's like teaching you. It's saying, come on, person, you need to start learning how to platform it, because later in the game, these aren't going to be a nice slide that takes you back to safety. It's going to be abyss that's going to kill your ass, and you need to get better at this game. So like, it's a really nice, Nintendo showing you how to play the game, teaching you, holding your hand initially before letting go and saying, this is how you're going to platform. And I think this stage does that really well, because I think from almost all the parts, when you fall, you will fall to safety more often than not.
For sure, yes. That is definitely an important aspect of it. And not only that, you not only have the kind of shallow water part of it, there's also the like step below that, which is where the tree is, the tree with the owl in it, which I kept thinking the owl was in Tall Tall Mountain. Is there an owl in Tall Tall Mountain, or am I just imagining this? Because I feel like...
I don't know how there would be an owl when there's no tree in Tall Tall
Maybe
Mountain.
This is the DS version again. Maybe this is something they added to the DS version, because I swear to God there was an owl in Tall Tall Mountain, but there isn't a tree there, so it doesn't make sense. But yes, I kept being like, oh, isn't the owl later in the game? And then I realized, oh wait, no, he's right here. You climb the tree and he takes you to the star that's kind of inside the cage, which I think you can get to without the owl, but feels like much more of a pain in the ass to get to if you don't have it, right? Like it's it just drops you over the top of it, and you're like, all right, in I go. Got the star, much easier.
Yeah, again, really weird star, pretty hard to work out, I think, if you're, just messing around.
Yeah, at least you can see it though, right? At least it's in the sky and you know it's there, so it's not like the one that we talked about before, which is blast into the fucking wall, and you're like, well, I mean, I guess.
And we'll get to them later, but there's a number of stars where it's like, walk into these 5 spaces. They're not even like defined coins or things to collect. It's like, just walk into this area that's like the 5 secrets of something.
Yes.
And
random numbers pop off, and you're like, why did that number pop off?
And it's like, what?
Yeah, those ones,
weird.
They are the worst. But yeah, I do really like this stage generally. Like, it gets you starting to get used to a bit more of using the cannons as well. There are a couple of stars that require the cannons. There's the one where you have to, I think the star where you have to get the one that's like under the platform where the big pole is, that's like kind of hidden almost, and you have to like shoot into the wall in order to stop yourself there. The description on that stage is really weird. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it just doesn't really track, and you're like, what is...
The cannons are hard to use generally because there's that arc. It doesn't feel like a perfect science, especially early in the game when you're not used to using them.
Yes, definitely. And
yeah, you can be punished quite harshly in this level for, getting the cannon wrong, where you can die.
Yeah, totally. On level design stuff, Matrial also written and said, the level design is really good for the most part. I think most Super Mario 64 stages feel like they're the perfect size with enough going on to warrant going into them 6 times. I think Womp's Fortress is a good example of this. And he says, Womp's Fortress is the standout. It has several different paths, and the stars are all in separate locations. A stage like Tall Tall Mountain has many different paths, but so many stars are just about going up this mountain, so you do the same thing a lot, which is a really good point in terms of you go to all different areas of Womp's Fortress. You're never just going to the same place. I think for the most part, like, you can end up near the top because it's easier to see the rest of the stage and maybe get to part of the stage from there. But there are other areas of, like, you know, where the cannon is and where the water is a totally different area that you can skip to faster by not going up and past the piranha plants and that type of stuff.
Yeah, it's super intricately designed, and this is a really good early example of that level design. And like, obviously I played Sunshine before 64 and DS, so I was already used to like these really large levels. Like Sunshine just has like some of the biggest levels other than Odyssey in the whole of Mario. And going from Sunshine to 64, I remember being like, wow, these levels are much smaller. But even coming back to it now, it feels even smaller. Like they feel even smaller and like more intricate, and like these little dioramas that you're just kind of running around and doing things on. And I think 6 stars generally for these dioramas is just the right number.
Totally,
and they did a really good job of saying, you're going to experience this part of the diorama here, this part of the level here, and Womp's Fortress is a really good example of that.
Yeah, for sure. How are we going to rank it, Bally? I think this is a...
I've got to go 5, honestly. Yeah. I think it's very strong.
I agree. This is a 5-star stage
really
for me
good.
As well.
Even if the textures don't match.
Yes. Even if that weird, like it just... And I think that does happen across other stages, but I think this is the one where it was the most stark to me. It just stood out, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But also, like, I was thinking about it, original Super Mario Brothers kind of has the same problem in that a lot of the textures just look like... And I think also one of the things is, right, there's the big Nintendo leak that happened where all these ideas and things that they had secreted away in their vault got put out to the public, and some of that stuff was showing like, here is the original texture for Mario 64, and it's literally like a PNG of like a brick wall, and they just pasted it onto the ground, and it's like, wow, that's real. They didn't even like create that as an asset. They got it like from a library or something. It's really weird.
I guess it's real like a 10 to 15 person team that's just kind of, I don't know, the most efficient way of doing it. I don't know.
I guess, yeah, probably made the most sense, especially when you're making a 3D game for the first time. That definitely makes sense. Cool. Jolly Roger Bay, Bally. Now, if there's one thing that I'm surprised that nobody wrote in about, it is how fucking awful the swimming controls are in Mario 64, and how, because of that, Jolly Roger Bay is one of my least favorite levels in this game. Now, you could argue music-wise, it holds up, and I think that's probably the most famous thing about it, right? But otherwise, it's like, this is a trial for me.
I think musically, it's very cool. I think even thematically, it's like, this is cool. This is like a bay. It feels like a very watery area, definitely. But after that, the controls, combined with the fact that in reality, this is just one big pit of water. And how do you get away with making a level that's just one big pit of water with maybe like some treasure chests at the side and like obviously a submerged eel and the pirate ship underneath?
Yeah.
Fine. But yeah, you can't get to the cool things like the eel and the pirate ship without the god-awful swimming mechanics. And yeah, it's a real shame. I think at the time it probably felt fine, but I think in terms of mechanically, that's just not aged well at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Waves wrote in and said, the music is pretty great, not quite that I'll download this level, but definitely nostalgic. Of course, Dire Dire Docks is a standout track. And I believe Dire Dire Docks is the one that they use in Jolly Roger Bay as well as in Dire Dire Docks.
Yeah, same music, definitely.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Toby also wrote in about this and said, things I noticed playing recently, there's very limited number of music tracks of levels.
Yep.
Bob on Battlefield music is used in so many levels. Rainbow Ride has the Secret Slide music. And yeah, I didn't really notice this either until I was playing this, but there's not a lot of like music in Mario 64. A lot of it gets reused in places that I didn't realize. And that's kind of a bummer, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because some of the most memorable tracks I found were the panpipes on the loading, like when you select your save file.
Yes, I love those.
That's a great tune. Obviously, the credit music is like a great tune. Jolly Roger Bay, Dire Dire Docks is a great tune. Bubble on Battlefield is a great tune. The tune for like TikTok Clock Rainbow Ride is a great tune until you start associating it with the millions of deaths that you have with those levels.
Yeah, sure.
Big Boo's Haunt, and we can get to that, obviously, just has this bizarre, creepy tune. And then you've got like the kind of happy, clappy snowland kind of music on the snow levels. And after that, I'm struggling to think of like any other distinctive music, to be honest.
Yeah,
definitely. But it works for the most part, as much as it is a bit simplistic, maybe.
Right, totally. It has its charms, and it does work. But boy, I don't know. I think like the only thing that kept me going throughout Jolly Roger Bay was the fact that the music is so calming, right? Like it's almost as if Nintendo knew that people were going to get mad at this stage, and they needed some kind of like really chill vibes to like get them down a bit.
It's a very good song. It's really good. What do you think of the eel and the pirate ship?
Oh, okay. So I was just wondering this right now. Is it the fact that when the pirate ship is up above ground, like when you have to do the red coin, that it's not down below? Like, is that the same? Is that the idea that the pirate ship in some stages is like there and then it's not down?
Narrative.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's lore. That's like fucking Dark Souls, man. Mario's Dark Souls. I love that idea, right? That the fact that the ship is either above the water and you can get the red coins from it, or it's below. But the thing that I was so confused by is the first star in this level, which is like, okay, you've got to get into that place where the eel is, but the eel's just sitting there. And the eel doesn't move for a straight, like, 3 minutes or something. So you are waiting there, and you're like, okay, I guess, can I squeeze past him? No, he kills me, does damage. Go back there again. I'm like, okay, do I have to? And I just ended up going up to the chest area, and I was like, oh, I remember the chest area, and I got the chest star instead.
A different star.
Yeah, so it's a different star.
You just have to bait the eel out with yourself.
Really? Because
it's not timed.
I had a look at a video as well, and it looked like the guy went near the eel, then just swam away for a while, and then swam back after 2 minutes, and the eel was gone. And that's kind of what I did as well. I went there, I swam away, came back a couple minutes later, and he was gone, and I could just go in. It's just really weird.
I think the eel basically has two settings. It's got the setting where it's obviously in its hole, wiggling, looking evil, and then it's got this other setting where it's swimming around the area, the bay.
Yeah.
And I don't actually think it allows you to see the transition. Like it's almost like two settings, and it's like they couldn't quite render the idea of it transitioning.
Yeah.
So you have your camera is looking away, and when you look back, it will actually have transitioned. And I think someone even did a weird thing where they forced, some mod or something, like managed to force the camera to look at eel as Mario was swimming away, and you can actually see the eel just transition from one to the other. There's like no in between, so like it's a really...
So there is literally no animation of him just exiting the area. That's weird.
There is to an extent, but then he flashes into like his next thing, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Like it's not like it's like two tracks essentially.
Weird. So I guess just because of that limitation, they couldn't do it.
1996, baby.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. But yeah, I still think that this is one of the worst levels in the game. Now the question is, Bally, is it like a 1-star or a 2-star? Does the music bring it up to a 2-star level? Because like there are some parts of this level that I do like. I do like shooting in the cannon to those really high kind of pointed areas, and I do like getting the red coins on the ship, and the chest star is fine, but it's just like my frustration getting the fucking star on the tail when he comes out of the stupid hole and it's like waggling at the back of his tail. Oh my goodness, that one is
that
a
stuff's
nightmare.
Rubbish.
I hate that star.
I think the music and the setting and it feels like a genuine kind of Pirate Bay kind of area, and I think lighting wise, thematically, it deserves 2 stars for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think like I could be mean about it, but there are some fun aesthetic things about Jolly Roger Bay, and despite the fact that level design wise it just does not hold up at all, it still gets something, got to give it something.
Yeah.
Cool Mountain. I like Cool Mountain. This is a fun stage. I think mainly because of the slide, right? The slide is the thing that as a kid I remember just doing the slide again and again and again because I just fucking loved slides. I remember doing Peach's Castle slide again and again and again. And especially this one where it has the secret where you go through the wall and you're like, ah ha ha, I'm going to do the cheaty thing. And I remembered, of course, that you can't win that star by doing the cheaty thing.
Oh, right.
So that sucked.
It's a harder slide.
It's
than
a
the
harder
other
slide, yes.
Slide, definitely.
I ended up doing it multiple times, but every time I did it, I was like, that's fine. I don't mind dying on this one because it's just fun to do, you know?
I think the jump in difficulty between like, Jolly Roger Bay hardly counts because you're just swimming around aimlessly trying to work out what the hell to do. So, but if you're talking about the platforming jump between Womp's Fortress to Cool Mountain, it's quite a jump because Cool Mountain, you're really working out the geography of how the mountain works. And like, other than the teleport, is there a way of getting from the bottom to the top of the mountain without exiting the stage?
There is, yeah. You've got to slide. If you go to that area where the teleport is, there is like a angled slide path that goes down to a like weird jut where there's a kind of really frozen piece of ice, but also next to it is one of the red coins. So you do have to get there at one point in time at least in order to get one of the red coins. And then from there, you can go down the side where like the kind of wooden walkway is. You can get there, I think, but it is a bit of a hassle. Unless you go all the way the long way round, you know, so.
Okay. So yeah, the geography definitely stumped me a bit. And so I did a bit of exploration and I was like, right, I need a YouTube guide to kind of work out what the hell is going on here. But stuff like the snowman's head and following the ball to the body, like that's really cool stuff. Like that's very fun. And the slide is fun. The red coins are a bit miserable in this stage.
Yes, they are, definitely.
But again, like there's some really clever things to do with the theming where Mario can get stuck in snow, and like, yes, it's a white surface and yes, it's snow, but actually it mechanically impacts Mario and the way that he can get his legs stuck in the snow, which I just think is awesome.
It's definitely better than shifting sandlands where you just go really slowly through the fucking sand.
And again, they copied that from Super Metroid as well.
Yeah,
like the sand
totally.
In that game. It's like, right, what are the worst aspects of Super Metroid? We better get them in Mario 64.
Where's the grappling hook, man? Where's the Super Metroid grappling hook in Mario 64? That's what I want to know.
Super Metroid was 94, right?
Yeah, I believe so. A couple of years before this.
A couple of years before. Yeah. They were still in the same thought process.
Yes.
But yeah, Cool Mountain is very good. I think it's too difficult for this stage of the game, but it is still a very good stage for sure.
Yeah, I like it. It's starting to do that thing where you can fall off the side and die, and
quite easily.
And yes, definitely, especially because the slippery nature of the surfaces. You can find yourself being like, oh, whoops, I just accidentally myself to death. And that definitely happened a fair few times when I was playing through it. But overall, it's a strong stage. It's solid. I don't think it's up to the heights of like the first two stages. And it's certainly not as bad as Jolly Roger Bay. I think this is a 4-star stage for me. This is a solid stage.
Yeah, I could go with 4 as well. Yeah. Let's go with 4.
It's pretty great. Then let's go on to the next stage, which is Big Boo's Horn. Now, Bally, I'm going to tell you, this is my biggest surprise of the game. I love Big Boo's Horn. This is a great stage, and I didn't think I would like it as much, especially, number one, we're very big scaredy boys, and we don't like these type of things, especially when I was younger, playing Mario 64 and DS, I was like, I never want to go into Big Boo's Horn again. I dislike it strongly. But I really like the kind of contained nature of the mansion, as well as, like, it has the weird secret level of going underground. The one weakness, I would say, is that for, I think, most of the stars, you just have to kill boos, right? The first one is going around all the rooms killing boos. The second one is killing boos in the roundabout underneath. The one on the roof, you have to kill a big boo to get up to it. Most of the stars in this game are just, in this stage, are just killing boos, and I think it's, there's interesting...
Big Boo's Horn, you gotta kill the boos.
Yes, this is one of those instances where I think the discovery and exploration is more of the puzzle, more so than the getting of the star, right? It's more about, like, when you're told about the roundabout, you're like, where is that? Because you don't realize until, or if you have fallen down to that area. So I imagine people playing it originally would be like, I don't know how to get this star. And then you get down there and you're like, oh, I get it by just killing the boos. But like the actual end game of getting the star is less interesting than the getting to the star in this case, I think.
Yeah, I mean, outside of like TikTok Clock and Rainbow Ride, it might be the most intricate level. Like when you think about the way that those corridors link together and how things all are structured, and it's got like the basement sewer area and everything. Like it's actually quite a lot it's quite a large, complicated. You can't walk around the back of the house. I certainly ended up doing that because you need to get on the roof.
Yeah, I do think like the size of the area around the house is maybe a bit too large because there's nothing in it, right? Like there's a couple of weird ant guys to just walk around and roam the edges.
Very strange.
But it's like this really
strange.
small kind of, maybe it's just like creating that sense of horror of like this wide open area, like this mansion that's like very small in the center and contained. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think just thematically it's such great fun experiencing like Nintendo's take on a mansion years before Luigi's Mansion,
yes.
and like that series, and it's kind of like this is kind of where a lot of that started. And Mario Sunshine actually has like a semi weird haunted kind of hotel style stage, which is kind of inspired by this as well, but this is really feels a lot more like Luigi's Mansion, which is cool. And like I think it works. Like it there is a big emphasis on platforming obviously versus a game like Luigi's Mansion, but like I think the corridors and the way that the books fly around and things like that would have blown me away in 96, and even today it's more interesting than most of these other levels.
For sure. I would say the biggest weakness of this stage is the camera, because it is small spaces and trying to figure out, like especially in some of the rooms where the bottom floor actually has areas where you can get up to the top floor without going via the staircase, and seeing that and being able to adjust and like view what's going on can be a bit of a nightmare. And we haven't really talked in depth about the camera yet, but let me bring in a couple of comments. PR Billy said, I only had 3 major complaints about the game. The camera is atrocious. Turning it makes a loud noise for whatever reason, which I kind of like, that just washes over me, I guess, at this point. I don't even notice the noise, but you're right. Like, it does have a weird, like, noise every time you do a notch on the C stick or on, you know, the camera stick at this point in time. And in some worlds, you can only move at 270 degrees. In some ways as well, on Bob-omb Battlefield, I was moving it to the left and it wouldn't, and I'd have to move it all the way back round to the right to get to where I wanted it to be. And it feels like this is this weird, like, invisible wall that you can't go past, and that's kind of the center point. And then you have to either go all the way back round the other way to reach where the camera angle you want. And then PR Billy finishes saying, flying to me feels not great. I feel like I'm never in control of Mario in these levels. And that kind of has somewhat to do with camera as well, just in terms of where he's positioned on the screen and like seeing what's in front of you, especially trying to get those red coins in that star in the castle where you look up at the sky. You also told me, Bally, you had a nightmare figuring out how to even look into the sky, right?
Yes, trying to get that the wing cap star where you I think after 5 stars the sunlight appears and then you can look up into the sun in the main hall of the castle. And I was like, okay, I'm pressing up on the C stick pad, whatever you want to call it, and it's like, this isn't working. You have to swap from Lakitu's view to Mario's view, and then rather than look up on the C stick, you just like look up with Mario's head. And I was like, what? It took me a good... Did I look it up or did I work it out after like 5 minutes? Either way, it wasn't a pleasant experience. No. And I was like, I mean, maybe that's just another area where had the game be remade, they could the camera is the biggest thing that they could have changed and made for, you know, a more solid experience overall. Because as we've already said, he handles actually really well in this game.
Yeah, and Toby also said, camera sucks. I find it interesting. It's literally impossible to do lots of things from your ideal angle. Having the camera personified in Lakitu is genius, and that is the fun thing, right? You barely see Lakitu. You see him in the other cold stage in the mirror, which is a neat thing. But yeah, aside from that, he kind of just disappears. You almost forget he's a thing.
I'd be fascinated by gamers younger than us picking up this collection who own a Switch, and we know that there's millions of them out there, young people who own Switches who will be interested in picking up 3D collection. I really want to know what they think about this game, and especially the camera, because they probably are having a bit of a rough time, but at the same time thinking these stages are kind of cool, you know, like, so it's a real shame that, you know, it can have that impact on a whole new generation of like Mario fans, you know.
Totally, yeah. The one of the lost stars in this game. So actually, the one thing I want to say of Big Boo's Haunt is it was the only level where I got 100 coins, and I think part of it was because I didn't really know what all the stars were. I didn't really look much up in Big Boo's Haunt because I kind of wanted to figure it out for myself, because I didn't really get that deep in it when I was younger. So for the stage that I didn't do when I was younger, I did kind of like try and do it a bit myself to kind of figure out what was going on. And as a result of trying to figure out how to get one of the stars, I just ended up collecting 100 coins naturally. And the nice thing about 100 coins is when you collect that star, it doesn't kick you out the level, which is great.
That is good.
And I really appreciate that, because otherwise that would be a real pain. But I think that 100 coins generally is something we didn't go for, and part of the reason is people in Discord were just talking about how much it's terrible. PR Billy said, finally having to get 100 coins per level is just tedious. There are some levels where I would just get to 97 coins and realize I'm stuck because I missed a few from enemies or blue switches. Overall, I'm still pretty pleased with the game. Most levels are very interesting, and the ability to do whatever star you want in a level is a great feature they unfortunately removed from later games. Yes.
Did they have 100 coins in Sunshine?
I believe so.
I mean, it's negated by the fact that those levels are actually larger and there's far fewer of them, perhaps. Yeah. But then I also want to say, did they have them in Galaxy? And I don't think they did.
Maybe they did. Maybe they did. I can't remember either. We'll get to that when we get to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think like it's pretty clear to us that we weren't going to do the 100 coins thing, and literally the only one I had was just pure chance of. I was like at 85 coins, and I was like, well, there's probably enough here for me to get it, so I might as well do it. So I did, and then I ended up getting that, and then I also ended up getting the other star at the end as well. So it was great. I got 2 stars in one, which was pretty cool. I appreciated that. I want to give this level 5 stars. Actually, really enjoyed it, and think it is one of the best levels in the game, and didn't think that going in. It surprised me the most, I think, Big Boo's Horn.
I also would just want to say the look and the theme, I think, might even be darker than the first Luigi's Mansion game.
Yeah.
And
the fucking piano that opens its fucking teeth and starts to bite you. Holy shit.
And they stick a red star behind the piano.
The red coin, yeah. That was the last red coin I got. I was like, where the fuck is this last red coin? And I realized I wasn't going into that room because I was just always scared by the stupid fucking piano. And there it was, hiding behind it. God damn it. That thing sucked. Hazy Maze Cave. Okay, so here's the thing that I also noticed when I was playing through this game. The wobbly surfaces in Mario 64, the way that things warp around is really impressive. You think about the texturing and kind of like the models and how things interact with each other. You jumping into a wall like the Shifting Sandlands, or in this case, into a pool of metal, and it ripples as you jump in, and like the physics on that stuff. For 96 video game, first 3D thing, I want to call out as really cool, and I really like that stuff,
I hope you're not using that as contributing stars towards
what? Increasing its ranking on this list.
Points, yeah.
Yeah, Hazy Maze Cave.
I think this is one hot mess of a level.
It really is. It really, really is. There are things I like about it. I do think that it is probably the most complicated level in the game in terms of navigation, right? Because you start off and straight away you have 2 paths to go down, which...
They give you a map.
Which doesn't make any sense, which I never looked at because it's illogical. But yeah, I think the one cool thing about this is it does tend to take you to all the areas, right? You're not going to finish Hazy Maze Cave without having explored each one of these places thoroughly. And that's cool, right? The red coins is like situated in this one space where you're doing moving platforms in the air and stuff like that. And the one with the kind of Nessie is down at the bottom in the cave water area. And you do go back there to unlock the metal cap later on, but it is still also kind of self-contained. Just getting there is the point of the level. Then you have the weird poison area underneath that is maybe one of the worst areas in the game. Like looking up YouTube videos for that constantly to figure out like there's a random...
Even with YouTube videos, it's not all clear because the landmarking in that area is just so... It's so repetitive. All the corners look the same.
Yes, and there are literally 2 areas where you have to jump up to a ledge.
Did exactly that. Yeah.
That lead to different stars. They go to different stars and they look the exact fucking same. I looked up a walkthrough, went to that area and realized it was a different one. Star, it was a different star. Like what? Oh, it's a wild stage with a lot of just navigational problems, I think. It's just hard to map out in your head how things connect and where things go to. Firstly, because it's mazy, right? Like this entire notion of it, but also because there's like verticality. There's lifts that take you up and holes that you fall down and all these types of things that make it really hard to just get your head around. And even as someone who grew up playing this game and knowing this level, I just remember regretting just going back into this one.
I think there were probably a handful of stages where they had leftover ideas here and there, and I think it feels like Hazy Maze Cave is where they kind of mashed a few of them together into one existence, you know? Like,
yes.
I'm not convinced it was all laid out carefully as one thing initially. I think it was a number of ideas from other areas that kind of made their way into it. I don't know.
It has one of the most obscure stars in the game, which I only knew about because obviously I know Mario 64. It's the one about the rolling rocks, and you get to that area and you're looking around, you're like, what the fuck? There's nothing here. You have to do this weird wall jump on this area where you don't think you should be able to get up to anything. It looks like the ceiling.
You can barely get the camera to look at that
exactly.
area,
it looks like it's just ceiling up there. You're not going to make anything, and especially because it takes so many tries in order to get up there. The normal person would just be like jumping there and be like, there's nothing here, and just move on and be like, what am I supposed to do? But you have to keep wall jumping on that part to get up to that weird star on the corner on a weird ledge that is really invisible for the most part. You can't even see where it is. And that is one of those examples of like bad level design, bad direction in terms of the name of the star, and bad just ability to get up there and even find it. It is maybe the worst star in the game in terms of all those aspects, just not clicking whatsoever. That one sucks.
Yeah. It's all kind of rough together.
Yes.
And
the other thing about it is like you need the metal cap for some of these stars. And getting the metal cap, yeah, I believe so. Or maybe it is you need the metal cap to unlock one of the areas in the level, but you get the metal cap in the level as well. So you have to realize
it's weird in that way.
Yes,
like, I think it might be the only one that you unlock inside the level.
Right, because the other secret stars, the other ones where you get the invisible cap and you get the wing cap, you get those as part of the castle. So you get
their levels. Part of the castle,
yes, they're secrets of the castle, whereas this one is a secret star within a stage, which has not been done up to this point, and is another reason why this stage is so weird. It's like, as if it wasn't navigationally weird enough, you have to go back down to the bottom level with the Nessie, get the Nessie to go over to this other platform that leads into this other level that also has a wobbly kind of metallicness to it, and it's like you're jumping into a painting within a painting. It's the fucking Inception of Mario 64. Like, you just go deeper and deeper and deeper into paintings and paintings. And then you get the metal cap. And how do you feel about the power-ups generally, Bally? I'll read this comment from Atreya who talks about them and says, the power-ups are very unimpressive. Only 3 and none are utilized in a very interesting way. It took until Galaxy to really incorporate power-ups in the 3D games, and I think 3D World is the best at that, but it would have been cool to see some more and to design more stars with them in mind. The level on the 3rd floor with the wing cap is probably my least favorite star in the game, given that if you die, you spawn outside the castle. Why? I gave up on that star as soon as I remembered the fact that if you fall down, it literally lands in the lake. You land in the fucking lake.
It's a hard one.
Terrible.
I managed to get it somehow, but it takes very patient gliding in a perfect spiral down to the switch that you end up pressing.
Yes.
But yeah, it's hard. Power-ups. I am not that impressed by the power-ups either. You got 3. They are all finicky and weird to use, and like the invisibility and the metal are just like, they're more puzzly than they are anything. And I think that abilities in Mario are the best where you get a sense of invincibility or it changes the action in some way, and I don't think any of them really do that. I mean, the wing cap does, I guess, but I don't know, I wasn't impressed. But at the same time, I don't even know the capabilities of having power-ups like that in 1996. So I think going in with the 2D Mario ethos of how power-ups work into a 3D game might not have been what they were trying to do at all. And it seems like they ended up not trying that really in the end anyway. So, and yet, Mario Sunshine, they just go in a completely different direction with the nozzles and no power-ups really. And Yoshi, obviously.
Right.
And then I agree, it is Galaxy before you kind of get that incorporation of power-ups that feel vaguely like a 2D Mario game. So, I don't know. I think in 1996, Mario in a 3D open space, jumping around and swimming and doing all these things is plenty. I would argue, you don't even need power-ups in this game. And the few that are there don't actually make the game much better generally, I would argue. I think they're fine. They're more puzzly based. But I would have liked to have seen a couple of action-focused power-ups. But at the same time, I think this game is absolutely great without them at all.
So what are we going to rank Hazy Maze Cave? Is it the first 1-star level in the game? Are we that mean to
Yeah, I had a better time with Jolly Roger Bay than this level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd go 1 star.
I think it's the idea that every time I had to do a Hazy Maze Cave stage, I'd just be like, you know, like you just have that like, oh God, what do I have to do here?
It's really bad. I didn't like it.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Lethal Lava Land, of the basement stars, which we're kind of in now, we're in the basement area of the game. I'd say this is the best level of the basement stars. I like Lethal Lava Land a lot. Obviously, there's fire, that it's annoying when you bounce around on your ass, but you can get places faster with the fire if you use it to your advantage, so that's fun. And I do like how small it is. Like it is nice and contained. You can kind of see everything from where you start the level. There's obviously the volcano bit, you jump in and do the volcano stuff, but the red coins are great fun. You can swim around on top of the shell, you beat the bullies, you go over to that side area where you go on the rolling log, which is good preparation for Tall Mountain later. Like I really just like Lethal Lava Land generally, and it's fun platforming challenges. This is definitely, the platforming is leveled up here in terms of where you want to go, and I think
especially that volcano.
Yes, that speaks to the thing I like a bit more about Mario 64 is the platforming is, you know, a bit more of a focus in some of these levels versus the exploration in others. Like there are some levels that way more exploration focused, less platforming. Lethal Lava Land is one of the more platforming focused stages, and I like it for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think thematically it's very simple. This is a hot lava world. I like that. When you jump on lava and you do, and Mario does all this, like it's great. I love it. It's hilarious, and you're right. It's better that he doesn't fall off, because it can be useful to kind of like, right, I know I've fallen off, but I'm going to get back there. I've got 2 more jumps to get back there. It feels a bit more tactical. I like that. I really like that this it's one of the first levels that's like, screw exploration, we're going to basically tell you what you have to do in this level, and it's all about execution, and I love that. This is like, you know, this is the best parts of Mario 64 are like, get from A to B and you have to execute it. And like, you know, the floodless stages in Sunshine, it's like those are some of the best areas. This is a bit like that. It's like you have to execute it right. And I agree. I think the rolling log, jumping up the volcano is really good, as hard as it is. And the red coins are fun. Boshing the bullies or whatever they're called is good fun. Like, I love everything about this level. I think it's a really strong level.
Is this a 5-star level? Is this a 4-star level? What do you think, Bally?
I think it's a 5-star level, yeah. And I think it's a 5-star level for very different reasons to like the other 2 we've given 5 stars to.
Totally. I think you know, when I was talking about Hazy Maze Cave, my reaction to doing a star was Lethal Lava Land was like, yeah, let's do a Lethal Lava Land stage. I was always up for doing another stage.
It's quite small and tight as well, you know. Yes. You know, it's not too complicated.
I think pacing-wise, it feels much closer to the start of the game, where you're just getting star after star after star, and you're not getting hung up on anything, you know? Like, I think it's a really good feeling to just be like, I'm knocking these stars out, I'm just doing them back-to-back, and you can get a real momentum going with Lethal Lava Land, which I really enjoy. On the other hand, Shifting Sand Land, which might be
looking forward to this.
The worst level designed by humanity. Oh my goodness, where do we even start with Shifting Sand Land? You got sand that you can barely walk in. You got instant death pits. You got a fucking pyramid that you can slide down and fall in the instant death pits. You got stupid, weird gravitational pillars that you for some reason can walk up and be on the side of and then be on top of, but one of them is stuck in an area.
Caps.
There's wing cap in this level. The vulture can steal your fucking hat in this level. There's a stupid, like, inside the pyramid part, which is actually probably the best part of the level.
I was going to say, I love that part.
Yeah, that stuff is good. But everything else about Shifting Sandland can suck my dick. I fucking hate it. Oh my god. This level is awful in every single way. And like, it comes down to me to stand on the 4 pillars, which is probably actually my least favorite star in the entire game. Because after I did it, I decided I'm not going to... Because after that is the red coins, and I'm like, oh no, you're not making me do this again.
Red coins is a harder version of standing on the 4 pillars, because 4 of the coins are essentially, you have to fly from the 4 pillars through the coins to get them. Yes, the quicksand insta-death is horrendous, and yes, I died many a time when I didn't feel like I deserved to die. Yes, you can slide off the pyramid into that quicksand. It is horrible. But this is the level where I really learned how to use the wing cap. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing. But by But by the end of this level, I was a real master with the wing cap. I knew how to like triple jump it off the smallest area possible. I was getting those coins. I was doing all those things. I was on the 4 pillars. I got the 6 red coins. And then there was the best bit of the level, which is, I think, the 2 stars one, which is the boss with the 2 hands, with the eyes on the hands. And then this has one of the best 5 secret stars, I would argue, where I did have to look up a guide, but it is actually pretty cool, like working out, right, I have to platform from here to get here, and like the sand falling inside the pyramid. Like, I really enjoyed all that stuff. And yes, I wasn't as put off by the red coins and the 4 pillars, so I wouldn't be as harsh on it as you are, but I do think that there's some rough stuff here.
It's awful. It's so bad. It's the thing that sucks about it, right, is they definitely knew how annoying it was, because they put that stupid little box that jumps about 3 times at the start of the level. That's literally the first thing that's in front of you. So they know that you're going to constantly be going back to that 4 pillars area, and they give you a shortcut straight away because they know how annoying it is. And I think that's the worst thing about it, is like they knew how bad it was, and they realized later on in development, they're like, well, okay, I guess we just kind of have to give them a little bit of a thing here to help them out. And
well, they also, like, near the starting area, you can also get on a shell, or you can get the wing cap. Like, there's 3 options to essentially help you through the level. So
that's the thing. Like, I'd only realized the shell thing until later on, after I was near the end of doing it, and then someone in the Discord mentioned the shell thing, and I was like, fuck, I should have been doing that this whole time.
It doesn't make it that easy.
No, it doesn't.
You can still hit a random edge and fall off it. And
of course. Well, and then there's the fucking tornadoes that just come out of nowhere and take you off your shell if you're on it. It's like, it's an endless nightmare that I could not escape from. I only did 4 stars in this level, because as soon as I was done with the stupid standing on the pillars one, it took me so long to even get inside. That's not even the end of the stage. The end of the stage is a boss. You fight a boss after doing the standing on the pillars, as if standing on the pillars wasn't pain enough.
I can imagine how the pitching meeting went for this. It's like, what do we associate with the desert? And they were like thinking insanity, going crazy. How do we incorporate that into this level? I know, we'll have quicksand and it'll drive them crazy, and then we'll do the
Bally, see, now you're making me want to like it, because you're doing mechanics through a narrative through mechanics, you know? Like, oh dear.
I honestly think the craziness is linked to the desert theme. I do think that was what they were going for.
Well, you know what? Sometimes you don't have to reflect the player's mood with the level, you know? Maybe let's just design a better
And
stage.
I also think the inside the pyramid and that boss pulls it up. So I would argue for like 2 stars.
No, this is 1 stars.
No.
2
stars. Come on.
You can be off in your magical fantasy land where this is 2 stars, but that is not reality.
With 2 stars. I like this.
I disagree. This is a 1-star level. There's nothing you can do to change my mind. In fact, this might be a 0-star level. That's how bad it is. I fucking despise Shifting Sandlands. So yes, at least we're out of the basement now. Die Docks is still in the basement, but Die Docks is one of those I actually did enjoy. There's some annoying stuff like going down in the water again, especially because there's a really long tunnel that you have to go and get to the area with the battleship, and then the battleship disappears.
I mean, it's cool because rather than 1 big pit of water, it's 2 big pits of water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just double the fun. But you do spend a good amount of time outside the water as well. Although there's some at some point I was like, wait a second, one of the stars was go through the grate, and I was like, oh, does that mean I have to have the metal cap and the invisible cap at the same time, and then I'll fall through the grating, because that's how it's worked? It turns out that's not the case. You don't actually fall through the grating, you just stand on there to get the star. But I wish they had done that. I wish they had got you to fall, because you can combine these power-ups. I didn't realize before you can be invisible and metal at the same time, which is neat.
Yeah, that's how you get that star.
No, because you don't fall through the grate. You don't.
You have to walk through a grate to get it.
You have to walk through like a wall that's a grate, right? But when you go,
it's underwater, so it's implied you have to have both powers.
Well, you don't need to though, because if you're metal, you can just walk onto the grate anyway, because it's the grate itself is putting bubbles up, right, which lets you not swim close to it. If you're just metal, you can just stand on that. You don't need the invisible one, because what does the invisible one achieve? You're not going through anything, right? So
I'm talking about the second area you swim through to.
yeah, I'm talking about that as well. Yeah, that great that you stand on the bottom. You do not need to be invisible for. You can just be metal. I thought you had to be both, but you don't, because if you had to be both, it would imply you fell through the floor, but you don't actually fall through the floor. Anyway, I don't really have a huge good memory of what transpired in Diadox, because I did part of it. I did the first part of it to get to the Bowser stage, and then I did the rest of it later. So, like, there's still some annoying stuff. The chest under the chests in this game, right? Chests with a random order of opening them is another consistent theme of stars, and they're fine. They're just kind of like, if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you just take a bunch of damage. You have to heal yourself, right? There's nothing.
It's like simple memorization.
Yeah.
It's just memorization when it's like walking through treacle, trying to swim between the.
Yes, and then there's the annoying part of the stupid fucking swirly pool in the middle. That is a pain in the ass for sure. So yeah, and then the other one that's really annoying is the manta ray rings. Like, just getting exactly through the 5 rings can be a bit of a pain in the ass.
I didn't find that too bad, but yeah,
Took me a while.
I mean, I prefer all this stuff to like eel tails and all that.
It's definitely better than Jolly Roger Bay, and I did like the red coins actually. Maybe because I did it first time without dropping to the floor once. I nailed all the jumps, and so maybe that was part of the reason why I enjoyed it, because I nailed it first time. But the red coins was fun up above the level, because it's more of an obstacle course kind of, you know, figuring out how to jump to what area and trying to get to places. So I feel like Diadox is a 3-star level. Like, it's got the water that brings it down, but otherwise I think it's decent. You know, it's fine.
Yeah,
it works for the most part.
I could go with 3 stars.
Snowman's Land, which is a pun, No Man's Land, which I just recently figured out from the deepest dive that MinMax are doing.
The stage is hard.
It's tricky, yeah. I saw you posting the video of the fucking penguin trying to go across as he shuffles past. That's being the first star in the level. Also, I remember putting me off when I was younger, being like, oh gosh, getting up here is a pain. And like doing the triple jump over the kind of weird ice kind of barriers that rush towards you. That stuff is annoying.
It's super cruel though, having to shield yourself with a penguin on ice, and then the penguin does this stuttery forward and back, and you're just like freaking out, like, how am I going to align myself to this penguin? And then if you're just the slightest bit off from it, the wind comes, blows you down the entire mountain, your hat falls off. It's just like, it's one of the most defeated feelings I felt in the game.
Yeah, for sure. That
happened
star,
like 5 times.
That star sucks. I tend to like the other ones. Like the one with the ice maze is kind of easy and a good one to just get straight away.
There's a couple of ice mazes.
Yeah. Is the other ice maze a part of this level? You have to go into a different... You have to crawl, don't you, into the little kind of cubby area and find that.
So you use a green shell to get up there, and then you jump over into the hole, and then you have to use a invisibility cap to get through.
Yeah, that's a neat one. Like, that is really a maze, actually, and trying to figure out how to get around corners and what isn't ice and what is. I think it's part of the way in which the N64 lends to its power here, right? I think if this was remade, right, fully remade as a game, this part would be way easier in the remake, because they would probably make it a little bit more navigable, but it's far less so because of the limitations of what the N64 can do to show ice and walls and transparency. So it's a bit trickier than it could be otherwise. I think my favorite level in this one is the red coins, just because you're surfing around on that shell and it's great fun.
It works well. It's fun. It's cool. It's because you got that big area around on the ground and climbing up the snowman, and there's basically nothing else. But what it does with those 2 features works really well. So I think it is quite hard to get over to that area where you get the shell. You got to jump on the thing to spin up, and it's like, that's a very not MLG Pro thing to have to do, right? But it's like, it's quite a difficult thing to expect players to have to do just to get, like, I think 2 of the stars. So
jumping on the spinny guys, right? Like, spin yourself through and twirl onto the upper level is it's much harder. I remember when I was younger, just because I wasn't as good as 3D platforming, and so if you jump. Oh, okay. Also, this has also reminded me of like the swimming in this game, and one of the things I figured out near the end of the game that I didn't realize before. I was so infuriated about jumping out of the water. Like, I didn't understand how it worked. I was like, kept pressing B. I was like, why am I not jumping out? To jump out of water, you have to hold back on the analog stick and
You're
press
like
B.
tilting back like you're flying in a rogue
It's like tilting
squadron,
Mario's
like,
body upwards so he's ready to jump out of the water. And I only realized that around this point in the game because you keep getting buffered by the barriers, and it was driving me insane for so long. And then I figured it out, and I was like, oh, at least I know now how to do it, because it's still a pain, but at least I have like consistency, which is very important going into the next world, which is Wet Dry World. Before we get out of No Man's Land, star rating, what do you think?
I'd give it a 3.
Yeah.
I think there's stuff like those layers of snow buffeting you is just a bit. It's not a fun mechanic. I see what they're trying to do.
It's mainly that first star that is a pain in the ass, and also the water takes your life away because it's freezing cold.
And you're being forced into it all the time. I might drop down to 2. But
No,
the theming is fun.
I think 3 is good, because there are some fun stars in here.
Good.
Like the going on the shell is fun in this level.
And all the ice stuff, sculptures is fun.
I agree.
Like, that's cool.
That's a 3-star. Wet Dry World. This is where we start to get into this idea of timing or positioning of how you go into the painting. Like they do a lot more of this in the later half of the game with this and Tiny Huge Island and TikTok Clock, of like the way you enter the level dictates how the level is laid out or what you do in the level. And it's a really cool idea. I just fucking dislike Wet Dry World a lot. So
yeah,
it's a pain.
I mean, on the entering the painting at a certain level or whatever, I personally think all that is just like a little bit too meta for what Mario 64 is generally going for. It feels like a bit, whoa, okay, right, what is there really the need to do this, especially with Wet Dry World, where it is inside the level there's just switches that adjust the water height
right
anyway.
Exactly. It's almost like just shortcutting your way if you know what the star is going to be, which for the most part for these ones I just had YouTube videos up, so I was like, okay, do I want to go in high, do I want to go in low, where do I want to jump into the painting to set this so that I don't have to waste all this time going and resetting the height, you know? A
bit like Hazy Mazy Cave. I think this world is very unthematic, and I would argue is maybe a bit of a hodgepodge of ideas put together. Like it just feels really weird.
It's like, this one section where water moves up and down, and then there's this kind of underwater city almost in another section.
Right. So I actually think that's a really cool part of this level that I had completely forgotten about.
I remembered it well because I was scarred by it as a child, right? Like I remember hating getting to that area, and then the red coins in that area. I gave up on the red coins in that area because it sucked so much.
You gave up this time?
Yeah, I did this time, yeah.
Yeah, it's rough, the wall jumping you have to do there. I think the idea of like this underwater town city thing off to the side is just so bizarre and weird, and like I like that. But I agree the jumping it's expecting you to do to get at least 5 of those red coins is pretty difficult stuff, and that's probably where I really just cemented my view that the wall jumping in this game really sucks. And it's hard. I think the whole water level stuff is fine. Again, this has one of those stars that's like find the 5 special areas that just randomly become numbers and then a star appears.
Yeah, I can't. What's it called? Like 5 itty bitty secrets or some shit like that. And you're like, what does that mean? Like, it's nonsense.
So, yeah, this is one of the levels that makes the game weaker, I would even argue. It's not great. I don't like it.
Is it a 2-star just because of the cool underwater theming for that one area? Or
I'd give it a 2-star just because of that town area, as much as miserable as it is to get around the town.
Yeah, I kind of like the one with the platform like going down. Like you get to the top and you have to hold down on the platform, and then you have to quickly get inside and jump back in to get the star that's in the cage at the top.
Oh, you're racing the lift.
Yes, racing the lift or getting back up to the lift.
That stuff's really hard, actually.
It's tricky. I did enjoy it though.
It's fine. I'm not wild about it, but I'd go with 2 stars.
It also introduces that enemy that I thankfully didn't get thrown by, but it's the stupid one, the purple round guy,
God,
who I remember being a terrible thing as a kid. But also, this level also has the stupid move around flinging guys who like pick you up and fling you backwards. I saw a bunch of Twitter videos of people just getting constantly thrown by them and not being able to move. and just
Just
dying.
imagine the developers sitting there like, this level's not quite hard enough. What do we need? We'll just put this guy here that just chucks them off, like, you know.
This was Bally, I swear to God, this is the origination of the fucking chucksters. Is these fucking guys?
Yes.
Oh, we'll get to the chucksters.
Chucksters.
Yeah, let's go with a 2-star for Wet Dry World. There's some interesting stuff about it, but it's not great. Tall Mountain. I almost forgot about this entire level because it's a tiny painting in the side, and I forgot about it, and I had to go back to do it after I unlocked the top of the castle, honestly.
Tall Mountain is my favourite level in this game.
Really? Wow, okay.
Really.
That's cool.
It's hard to explain why, maybe, but I just love the idea of platforming your way up to the top of a mountain, but at the same time, it's a challenge. It's not like Bubble Battlefield, which is easy to get to the top. This is hard to get to the top of the mountain, but there's lots of secrets along the way, and we're going to more or less incorporate getting to the top of the mountain into almost every star in this level. However, there's lots of different things you have to do along the way to get the star at different points. And I love that about it. On top of the fact it's got a secret slide in it, and slides are the best thing in this game. So I think this just has everything going for it. I think it also has the crazy TikTok Clock Rainbow Ride
music?
Manic music. Yeah. Which at this point in the game I was loving. By the end of Rainbow Ride I was less keen on. But yeah, I love everything about this level. I think the theming, it's almost like reminds me of the like Choco Mountain or something in Mario Kart. Right. It's like maybe this was like the inspiration. I don't know. It's just like it's a boring rocky mountain, but I love that there's just an emphasis on platforming, and it's just a clear blue sky and some mushrooms, and I love it. It's great.
I think it does use the space really well, right? Like in terms of the red coins are kind of lower down, and then you also have the vine wall with the moles, and you have the rolling log area with the fucking monkey. The monkeying sucks.
The physics on that log, and I watched your stream of you doing it, are wild.
They are wild.
You can go so far without falling. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like that's the thing with modern game design in mind. I was like, why am I still on here? / like I was trying to play it carefully and be like, okay, I should rotate it like slowly from the other side, but you can't rotate it from the other side unless you go extreme, and you got to go extreme the other side in order to make it go back in the other direction. So it really is a bit of a and like they do a little bit with the one in the Lethal Lava Land, but I think this one is even more so just weird, and trying to get your head around it is tough. Yeah, I like this one a lot. Also, I don't think I ever knew about that secret slide in this level. So that was a brand new experience to me. And I was like, holy shit, I don't think I've ever seen this before.
I feel like I hadn't remembered up until I did it. But then when I did it, I was like, oh, of course, right? Yeah, I did remember there was one more level in the game that had a slide that wasn't the castle or Cool.
I might have known about it in the past, but it completely escaped my brain. Like it was like a brand new thing that I'd first discovered.
It's also a really fun slide with like a big trolling skull and crossbones.
Right,
like,
yes.
Don't go this way, you'll die.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Like,
it does do that. It's definitely a much more tricky challenge, I guess, in terms of...
Yeah.
It's like level 2 from the slide in the castle, essentially.
Yeah.
Making it a bit more tricky. And at least you don't get to do it... You don't have to do it again to get a faster time or anything. It's just 1 star, right? So that's neat. That works pretty well. I do like Tall Mountain. It is a fun level. There's the Wiggler, right? That's one of the bosses.
No, that's Tiny Huge Island.
Is that Tiny Huge Island? Okay, maybe I'm thinking the wrong one. But Tall Mountain is good. I just don't like some of those jumps, right? Like getting behind the waterfall. Getting the star behind the waterfall is a pain in the ass. Like the monkey at the top. Because he has to come down and then open up the star that's like over the bridge. Some of that stuff is a little tricky to get sorted.
With the monkey, you literally just have to get to him and then follow him.
Yes. I think part of it was I wasn't looking things up of how to do it, and so it just was me understanding what to do was the tricky part versus actually doing it.
Yeah, if you view it... So I view this level much less as work out the puzzle and much more so as execute the action.
Yes,
and as an execute the action level, that's why it's my favorite.
Yes, and the other fun thing about it is getting to that mushroom. Clearly, you have to use the cannon, but you can just long jump there, and I did it. That's how I got that star.
I saw you do that. Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah, because I was like, I feel like I can make that if I do a long jump, and what do you know? You can do it. So
But again, getting to the cannon, like you follow this very cool like side cliff edge, which is very hidden, which I thought was very cool. There's a few of those in this game. Funny routes to access things. Like I think there's some under area in Cool Mountain you can access and glide to, and it's not necessarily a secret. You are meant to do that, but the way you access the cannon in Total Mountain is cool. Although I appreciate it's cool that you can also just long jump to that star.
Yeah, totally. It's a neat level. I'd probably go 4 stars on it, but I know you probably feel like 5 stars for you personally.
I want it dragged up to 5 because Shifting Sandland got
shafted.
Disqualified. Shafted.
Tiny Huge Island. This, Bally, by far is the stage in the game that I know the least about going in, because as a kid, I didn't know how to do the first star, and so I gave up on it and never went back to it. And it turns out it's a pretty cool level. I actually really like a lot of the switching you do and the idea of being big just to get to the top, and then you can go in the pipe to like kind of shortcut yourself. There's also some really weird shit in this stage, like you can get on that shell and that shell starts going across the area. You jump off to try and make it to that one ledge, and then the wind just holds you and the wind just picks you up and puts you there. It almost feels like they designed the level with the big one in mind and then realized when you're a small Mario, oh shit, you can't actually jump enough to get to that point, so we have to put this random bit of wind here to pick you up so you don't die trying to get there when you can't actually get there, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. I think it's a very cool level, and also has another race with Koopa.
Yes, this is where the second Koopa race comes in.
Which is fun. It's got a really obscure red coin level inside the mountain.
I strongly disliked getting to this one, which is why I just decided not to do it, even though I could have done it.
I mean, it's not much fun once you're there either. It's a very specific platforming die to your death.
Yes.
Die to your death. Fall to your death. Red coin collectathon inside the mountain, and then the Wiggler fight is just pure strange, where I saw a couple of videos on YouTube of how to defeat it, and you're essentially just, you can ground pound near him without even ground pounding on him.
Really?
When you ground pound on him, you damage him, but he also damages you, and it's like
I managed to ground pound him without damaging myself twice.
On him?
Yeah, on him, yeah.
Really? On the head or the body?
On the body.
Okay, I mean, I ground pounded on him twice, took damage, collected coins, healed up, and then did the round 3.
That's weird.
Kill him. Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, very strange boss. And yeah.
But again, I'd never seen that boss before. I didn't know Wiggler was a boss in this game. You know?
I hadn't realized at all either. It's probably the one boss I completely forgotten about. But I think the whole nature of like tiny, huge, get up the mountain as you're big, get down it when you're small. Again, it's got a 5 secrets thing, which was actually fine when I knew where they were, and it was kind of interesting how you do it.
Right. I think the problem with these 5 secrets is it never explains what you're looking for, right? Yeah. So it kind of it makes you run around for no reason. The other thing is, like with this one especially, because you don't know whether you're going to be big or small, you don't know whether to look for the secrets as big or small. And it turns out for this one you have to be big because you can't go through a lot of these holes. If you're small, you just go through the opening, and I don't believe it counts it as a secret just because it's like an opening that you go through. But all of the spots in this level for that secret one are just go to a hole that small Mario could fall down or go inside potentially.
And again, like, I don't see the need for the paintings to be big and small. So when you're in the level, you could have just gone in and out of warp pipes to like get big and small. However, I do like the theming of like Mario running at a painting as it's getting like bigger and bigger and bigger. And
yes, that is cool.
That is a cool effect. That is a cool thing to do in the game. But the idea that like that dictates whether you enter the level big or small is just another time where I'm like, I'm not that fussed about it.
For sure. It's a neat level. I don't think it's one of the best. I don't think it's one of the worst. It probably sits around a 3-star for me overall.
3-star. Mainly for innovation. I don't think it really executes all that innovation particularly well. But there's some really cool stuff in there.
For sure. And I think one of the other problems is like every time to get to a certain point you have to do the same thing again and again, you know, like being small Mario, going through the hole, through the water, over to the area just to become big Mario, you know. Shortcut wise, it's not, there is one I believe where you can jump down and hit a switch and it creates those like blocky platforms in the air, but aside from that mini shortcut there's not really like quick ways to get around the island otherwise, which can be a little frustrating. And then we get into the final kind of couple of stages.
Are we going for
of this game.
three stars on Tiny Huge
I'd
Island?
say probably 3 stars for Tiny
I'd
Huge
go 3.
Island. Yeah. Tick-tock fucking clock, my friends. This is a stage.
It's a lot harder than I remember.
It's really tricky, and I think both these final 2 stages are much more like, all right, you've been through this whole game, now platform, motherfucker, I dare you, right? Like, that's what these 2 areas are, and I remember being okay with Tick-tock clock when I was younger. I think partially because you can make it much easier for yourself if you just stop the clock, right? If you just do it and you just freeze it time,
But
you
that
can
only
get
works
through.
on like a couple of stars.
It works for like majority of them, I would say. And like as someone was telling me in the stream, you can do it with it being stopped for all of them. You just have to do some weird backwards jumps that are hard to do.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite get those going. So for the most part, here's the thing. You either want it to be completely stopped or you want it to be really slow. If you're going to go for speed running, sure, you can go for the fast one because then, you know, when the giant clock arm starts going around, you're not going to have to wait there for 30 seconds each time for it to come back around.
So what if I told you I only did all of these stars on fast?
I would tell you you're a lunatic, and how the fuck did you do that,
I just basically
Bally?
accidentally did it because I thought that there was stopped and I thought it would just stop and go. So I thought big hand on 12 was stopped, big hand on 6 was go. And so all the sort of guides that I saw, and I guess these must have been speedrunners, or not speedrunners, but just people who were keen on doing the level fairly fast, went onto it with the big hand at 6 every time. So that was how I went into the level every time. But not only is it faster, but there is no regularity, or if there is, it's over a course of like 40 seconds, but there's no regularity with the pattern of how the blocks and things move. Like if you stand and watch it for like 20, 30 seconds, I swear to God, there's like no regularity with like when it changes. It'll give you, it'll do the little bob before it spins. That'll notify you. But other than seeing the bob before a block spins, there's nothing previously to the pattern, like a Galaxy, like a Mario Odyssey, like whatever these other games are that have all these pattern, timed blocks, movement, etc. There's no pattern to the fastest mode on TikTok clock. It's mad.
Yeah. That's why I didn't do it, because it's lunacy. The other thing is I didn't realize there's another mode which is like stuttery mode, which is where it moves slowly, but then it will just like stop, like, and then start again. Like it just kind of stutters and then goes, and it's really strange and doesn't make much sense. And that one was a bit of a pain as well. But I mean, some of these are just, for the most part with TikTok clock, right, it is about just getting higher and higher and higher in the level. And the level is so much higher than I remember.
It's really long.
You get up really high, and there are a couple of places where you go in differing paths. So there's like one part where you have to go to an elevator to the side where there's a heart to heal yourself, and that is a different section to the other side which takes you down a bit and then back up round. It's a wild level that definitely tests platforming the most in this game, I would say. Jiff wrote in and said, Mario 64 is pretty great until you get to the 3rd floor, clock room area. I grew up with it, so I'm fine with the controls, even if wall kicks require a bit too much precision to work. Thankfully, they nailed that by Sunshine, though. One thing I really enjoy is the high skill ceiling for controls and physics. You can make Mario do so much, it's nuts. And I think that is kind of what you have to do in TikTok clock, is you have to have a real mastery of all the different types of jumps you can do by the time you get to this level, because, you know, especially with a thwomp, I had the option to be, am I going to triple jump or am I going to hold down for a backflip to get on top of him? And in the end I did backflip, but boy, like it's real tricky to figure out like what is the best approach here, because either can work, and it just depends on where you have spec'd, really. Where have you spec'd all your skill points in terms of your own ability with Mario?
I think that thwomp is the toughest star in the whole game, actually.
It's one of the harder ones, yeah.
It definitely took me the longest, I think, out of all the stars in the game. And yeah, you really need to nail the platforming, and it is very useful to like have a guide and know where you're going as well, because as you said, there are branching paths at different points, and if you're just starting the level, sure, you'll reach a star, but if you've already got some of the stars, you need to make sure you're on the right course for your star. And ironically, this level has like one of the easiest red coin stars in the game.
Well, the thing is, if you know that you have to just put it on freeze, then it's just there and you do it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very unique stage as well because it is one big tube. So camera wise, it's not great because you're looking from the center of the tube towards Mario beside the wall rather than like Mario typically on a mountain like a Bob-on Battlefield, where there's a lot more freedom to the camera and looking at Mario as he's on the mountain rather than you being in the middle like you are in TikTok Clock if you're talking from a Lackey 2 perspective, So
sure, yes.
It's tough. I'm glad it's in the game. I like the level. I don't think it's unfair most of the time. I thought I'd fallen through a platform, and I tweeted it and people had said, if you look closely, you can kind of see the shadow moving to the side of the platform. So I think that was a bit harsh, maybe. I think it would have been nice.
Yes, it's definitely the level in which one mistake will cost you the most, right? Like, you accidentally miss a thing, it's so likely that you're just going to fall down a giant hole all the way to the bottom and just go past all the progress you've made all the way to the top. And so I think it's the one that makes me the most antsy about when you get further. Like, the further you are, the more stressful it gets because you're like, one error here, it's going to ruin this entire run. And Maitreya wrote about that, the idea that jumps in Super Mario 64 require so much more commitment than in any other Mario game. I don't think this is necessarily bad, but it can make jumping from platform A to platform B a bit of an ordeal, especially when you're above a bottomless pit. And I don't think they would want just jumping to be as challenging as it can be in Super Mario 64, highlighted by all subsequent games having a mid-air gimmick, right? So like Sunshine having the flood, or in Galaxy having the spin, or even in Odyssey having the cap throw, right? You always have like an adjustment almost in the other Mario games that this one kind of does with the air kick. Like, the air kick is a little bit of a thing, but I never use that and I never remember I have it either. So yeah. What do you think about TikTok Clock rating wise, Bally? How many stars are we giving it?
I'd go 4 stars because out of like my favorite levels in the whole game are the levels that are a platforming challenge and it's more about get from point A to B. There's not necessarily massive puzzles involved. So like Total Mountain, that's why Total Mountain's my favorite. And like early on, stuff like Womp's Fortress is great. And obviously like Lethal Lava Land. I think this is like in the vein of those levels. So I just think that there's some frustration in the camera especially. And I just don't like all the clock stuff, honestly. And when I say that, I mean all the speeds of the clock. I think they could have just had a mechanical moving level and it would have been fine. I think that they tried to go for something special with the whole, you can have it stopped, you can have it medium, you can have it fast, and it's like the secret thing that I think they think they're adding this extra secret sauce to make the level extra special. I don't buy it personally. I think it would have been a great level without all that stuff personally, and I like my vanilla, you know me. And
that makes sense.
I'd have been happy like that, as much as I do actually like the clock theming in terms of cogs spinning around and we are in a big clock. Like, that is fun. So
as much as I was shouting at the game in the TikTok Clock run as I was streaming that, I think overall I did enjoy playing through it because it is a challenge, right? Like, it feels like almost like a final exam before you kind of finish the game. At least one of the final papers that you take, right? The other one being Rainbow Ride, which we can get to. And I think that Rainbow Ride holds up better.
Are we going 4 stars on clock?
Yeah, I'd say, I can agree with you with that.
Okay, let's do that.
Rainbow Ride holds up better than I remember. There's still stuff about it that is annoying. I would say the most annoying aspect of Rainbow Ride is waiting. And what I mean by this is carpets go at a set speed, at a set pace. You have to. It is almost like an auto-scroll. This is kind of where they took the idea of auto-scroll Mario levels from the 2D games and brought it into Mario 64, where a lot of the time, to be successful at the carpet ride, you actually have to turn the camera to a side-on angle as if you're playing a 2D Mario game, like jumping over the kind of platforms that get in your way or doing backflips on top of ones as your carpet like passes through the glass and you have to get to the other side of it. There's a lot of that going on, though that isn't the entire level. Like, that's to get to a certain area in the level where there's one particular star that is the first one, I believe, that's a real pain in the arse. We have to follow it all the way around. You get into the house. The house has a fucking fire thing coming out of its center, and the
house is mad. It's so weird.
It is strange. It's just a weird house in the sky. But then also, if you are off the carpet for too many seconds, it will start blinking, flashing, and disappearing, just like the carpet does in Mario 2, where the owls have the carpet and then you steal them from them, but they'll disappear if you're not on them for long enough. Actually, they just disappear after a set amount of time, I think, in Mario 2. But these ones, if you don't step on them for long enough, they will start blinking and then they'll just disappear. And if that happens, then you're fucked. Like, there's no way to respawn the carpet. You just have to either kill yourself or, like, find a way back. And thankfully, in that house, there is a another one of these random teleporters where you stand outside the deck and it will just teleport you over to the area where the red coins are, and that's actually an easy way to talk to the pink bomb to open the cannon, which you do need for one of the other stars. So yeah, I actually enjoyed Rainbow Ride a bit more because I think there is a bit of obstacle coursey nature to it.
Yeah.
Outside of the carpet, like when you go to that area which has the swinging bridges and also the triangles, which the triangles may be the most scarring thing from Mario 64 for me as a child. I was never able to do that triangle jump stuff.
But they're not actually that bad at all.
They're not actually.
And they even have like a floor underneath them, so when you fall through, you just try again. Like, you're not dying.
Yes, although because
like,
when they do change, they do go slippery, so you can get really a rogue slip off the side can happen. However, I think I was just bad as a child at platforming, and so these more platforming focused levels right at the end were much more of a rigorous challenge.
I think we had mostly checked out of the DS version by TikTok Clock and Rainbow Ride. I certainly had.
Yeah, I mean, and by that point in time, you have more than enough stars to go and take on Bowser, right? So it doesn't really matter at that juncture. But I did really enjoy finally conquering my fears and beating the triangles. I did it, you know. It's a really tight window though. Like, you really almost have to do a sideways jump in order to get up to the top there.
I mean, that's what I love about this level the most, is it's just an assortment of assault courses that they just stick together.
Yes.
And they kind of have just different carpets leading to different ones, and you've got the main thrust of the level is getting to that boat where there's the original star, but then the final star over the rainbow with the cannon, and it's like a nice symbolic way of like, you are about to beat the game, as in like the final level before Bowser, and you're going to catapult yourself through the rainbow to get the star. Like, that's fun. Like, I love all that stuff about this level. I think it's thematically really fun, and just, you know, the obstacles themselves don't feel as frustrating as TikTok Clock. There's none of this timing rubbish. Well, the timing's with the carpet. The timing's not with the entering on the stupid mechanical clockwork, whatever. So I love that about this level. I love that you can just jump from one assault course to the next, and the red coins are fun to get in like this big maze thing. And I love this level. I think it's one of my favorites as well, and I preferred it to TikTok Clock. Yeah,
I think I also preferred it to TikTok Clock generally. I think by this point in time, despite the fact that it has bottomless pits and you can fall through the sky,
it's very hard. Not denying
it is challenging, yes, but I think by this point in time your skills are high enough where you're not actually doing that as often in Rainbow Ride, you know? Like, by this point in the game, you're good enough to where you can handle it for the most part. And yes, you can get caught up on going all the way to the end and then fucking up at the last minute, as I did with the stupid house and getting set on fire and then having to do it again. But
when you were by the boat, like 2 or 3 times when I watched your stream, you had the camera on the wrong damn side, and you were just like, as you got to the boat with the platforms next to the boat, you didn't even have sight of Mario.
No, Mario just like was impossible to see, and then eventually I realized that I had to have the camera the other side in order to actually see what was going on.
I couldn't believe you even attempted it with the camera on the wrong side.
There was one attempt where I actually got past it when the camera, and I think that was the first time I did it, which is why I was like, "Oh, I'm fine, I can do this," you know.
Exactly.
So I kind of like put myself in a worse position than I should have been in.
It was the first time I got there, and I had the camera on the right side, and I still died. Like, I still messed up the platform.
Oh no! Wow.
Like,
So Former wrote in and said, "Hope you two enjoyed the game. In my eyes, Super Mario 64 easily holds up in most areas. They almost completely nailed how Mario should feel in a 3D space, with some exceptions such as the weird semicircle he'll sometimes do when you turn around in place," which I think that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of like being by a wall and then like he just doesn't go where you want him to. Course design is also generally great, with one glaring exception in Rainbow Ride. It's astonishing how much they got right on their first attempt, and many elements like the size of the worlds have become assets that contribute to the game's fast pace and pick up and play nature. Didn't get much, exploration of why Rainbow Ride is a glaring exception there. But I can understand why people dislike this stage. I think it is to do with it's a bit disjointed, right? It doesn't feel like a lot of cohesion to Rainbow Ride. It does. This by far feels the most like a Mario Galaxy stage than any other one in the game to me, in terms of random areas floating in the sky.
I'd say with the exception of the routes leading up to Bowser, which we can get to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, those also have, and also like kind of the Mario Sunshine stages as well. The floodless ones have that similar vibe going on. All what we're saying is Mario Galaxy was kind of a glint in the milkman's eye all the way back in 64, before it was finally birthed in Galaxy.
But I actually think the levels leading up to Bowser and stuff like Rainbow Ride feel more like 3D World than they do Galaxy. I mean,
yeah.
What I mean by that is 3D World's moveset feels a bit more like 64 in the sense that Galaxy, you do have the air control with the spin. And I've already said, like, I think Mario feels a bit doughier, a bit easier it's hard to explain, but Galaxy feels a little bit dumbed down. I think they do that in a number of ways that we can get to when we discuss that game. And in that sense, I think 64 feels a lot more like Odyssey and 3D World. And in particular, I think levels like Rainbow Ride and like the linear nature of the levels leading up to the Bowser fights feel very 3D World-esque. Or like a bit like, as you said, the floodless levels in Sunshine, although I think the controls in Sunshine feel very different. But anyway, I think the nature of that design feels very similar, and that's when I think this game is at its best.
Sure, it's kind of like the step between 2D Mario and 3D World in some senses, because those Bowser levels do in some ways feel like 2D levels, right? Because they are often side-on view, and you're going on platforming challenges left to right, especially with the fire and the jumping.
And that's why when 3D Land came out, it was so refreshing. I was like, this is the blend between 2D and 3D Mario everyone's been... Well, I don't think people have been dying for, but when it came, everyone's like, this is refreshing, this is different and unique, and obviously 3D World copied a lot of those ideas. So like, I do love that design of Mario games as well. Yeah,
for sure. That definitely is the case. And I think by this point in the game, you are so confident with Mario and you are moving him around a bunch. And a couple more comments about like the movement in the game. Toby said, it still controls like a bloody dream, comboing multiple long jumps, pivoting just at the right time for a side flip feels so good. And I think that for me was almost the case. I think the one thing is the side flip, where getting the right...
Never mastered the side flip.
Getting the right momentum and then backwards again to get it to activate is a little trickier than I would like it to be. But once you understand like how far you have to go to activate it, then it really picks up.
I find it much harder than like the backflip in Sunshine, like the reverse. You'll get to it, man. I'm sure you've done it a few times, but like when you're turning around and jump and you do the backflip.
Sure. And then PR Billy says, movement feels incredible. I know this game doesn't have the extra jump spin, but I was able to use the kick in the air and ground pound to correct my jumps if I under or overshot it respectively. Mario has a lot of inertia when he stops, similar to his 2D counterpart, which I found annoying at first, but got used to over the course of an hour or so. And yeah, he does have a bit of a slipperiness to him, right? There's the little animation of puff of smoke around his feet that is similar in a way to Slippery Mario in 2D, but in 3D, and it works pretty well. What are we thinking for a rating for Rainbow Ride?
I'd like to go with a 5. I had a really good time with that level, as hard as it is.
Yeah, for sure. I'll agree with that, even though I probably would side more. I would side more on 4 stars and for kind of both these levels, TikTok and Rainbow. But I enjoy them enough to where I can see that as a thing. And then maybe just talk about the Bowser stuff generally. Those stages are fun. I like them overall.
Yeah.
They are good challenges. They definitely feel different from the rest of the game. And as we said, they do have that side-on perspective. And again, like talking about Mario Galaxy, there's one part of the final Bowser level where you're literally walking up the side of a wall and round a thing and down again with the fire shooting out at you. It really has that vibe going on to it that I didn't realize back in the day, but it's totally there. You can see the groundwork being laid in some senses.
It's pretty cheeky them sticking red coins in those levels as well. I felt the need to do them on the first 2, but then by the third I was like, I'm not doing the red coins.
Yeah.
They're really quite challenging to get them all, and often they're like really unfairly hidden, just like in a box somewhere or hidden around a corner, or like they would sometimes create tiny little platforms that are just beyond like your eye line with the camera that you have to walk right up to before you can see it and kind of get the red coin. So it's fun, but I love those levels.
They're hidden in a way that is sometimes frustrating, but yeah, they're all right. They do the job. I do think that the Bowser fights are pretty underwhelming generally, right? Like,
yeah.
And you got to forgive Nintendo for this being their first 3D game, and as we've mentioned, I don't think the boss fights are particularly great, and maybe that's a thing Nintendo and Mario haven't super figured out properly, aside from, I would say, the 3D Land and 3D Worlds of this world, who actually figure out that like a final boss fight should be more platforming focused as opposed to this weird actiony thing.
I like the take of 3D Land and 3D World, but I think the boss fights in Galaxy, Odyssey, and Sunshine are all great. And I think what all those three games do that make the boss fights so fun is that they're almost all associated with a specific power-up often. Or, for example, even in Galaxy, the early boss fights, it's like timing with the ping pong balls and spinning back attacks. Like, I think all those boss fights are fantastic. As much as they're guilty of repetition often, I do think that they are some really good boss fights in comparison to 64's.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I was mentioning to you before we started recording was fighting Bowser on DS was so much easier because you had the bottom screen to look at to see where you were angled in relation to all the bombs, versus here where you have to kind of like move the camera a little and try and zoom out and try and figure out where you're actually throwing him. And even then, when you throw him, it's a crapshoot unless you're like right next to the bomb. For the most part, those fights are just a bit of luck.
It does feel like you're spinning Bowser really fast. It just, unless you're really near one of the bombs at the edge of the stage, which you can't be when the stage becomes a star, just feels like luck. It's like it's almost impossible to time.
It is awkward, and it is a bit of a pain, but Bowser is he's there to be swung and thrown. Unfortunately, we no longer have So Long Gay Bowser, which was cut out of this version, and that's a shame. But these stages are fine.
I'm surprised they didn't re-record it just more clearly, where it's like, so long, King Bowser.
Yeah. Like a really poorly edited word just thrown in there. Yeah, that would have been a thing for sure. But you can actually replenish health, which I didn't realize, of like, oh, just wait until all the fire happens and then it'll disappear and some coins will pop out. So you do have a kind of reliable way for you to get yourself back to full. Because I believe if you die having gone into the Bowser fight, it does start you right before it again. It does that with a few of the boss fights in this game, like with the Shifting Sandlands. Once you get inside the pyramid, if you die to the hand boss, it does load you back into that boss fight. Yeah. Instead of having to do the stupid fucking stand on the pillars again.
Stand on the 4 pillars.
Yes, for sure. So generally, that I think that probably wraps us overall on Mario 64, Bally. Are there any other things that you want to say about this video game? We've kind of gone super in depth on every single part of this game.
I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Just a lot more stars that are very puzzle related than I had realized going in. And as someone who I definitely, as I've already said, enjoyed the stars where it is about executing an action rather than working something out. And there could have been maybe a few more of those stars I would have enjoyed a bit more, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I think overall, I'm positive on it. I like it. I think that as a game, I would love for it to be properly remade. I've come out of this being like, man, but what if this? And what if it had a proper camera? And what if some of these like little kinks were ironed out? It could really be like similar to how I feel like if Super Metroid was remade in the Zero Mission engine, that would be a perfect video game. Like Mario 64 is so close to being that. It's just some of the eccentricities of its control and its kind of age, really, the creaks are there and you feel them. And you also have this kind of idea of what it could be with stuff like Womp's Fortress being remade in Galaxy 2, right?
And the Mushroom Kingdom
in Odyssey.
Like,
oh my goodness.
They do like playing with that nostalgia. It seems weird that I guess 35 isn't the most notorious anniversary perhaps, but
and Toby also said, side note, Nintendo are incredibly lazy for not doing anything to this game. It should have been a full HD remake with Odyssey's engine. We just take the scraps we're fed from them. Very true, because we all have been playing this game anyway, right?
Sorry, say that again.
No, I'm just saying we've all been playing this game anyway, so Nintendo got us, right?
Yeah, we thought this was a great time to do this for the show and talk about these games. So I'm happy to play them in that sense, but I probably wouldn't have bought them and picked them up otherwise. I was just going to say, I put out a Twitter poll saying, will we get an HD Mario 64 remake before his 50th anniversary? And most people said no. And I thought, you know what, my Twitter followers, they know Nintendo too well. They really
do.
They really know them.
Or maybe we've just made them all so cynical that they, have fallen down the same track.
Do you think we're going to get that HD remake at some point, and will it be before the 50th anniversary?
I mean, I could see it being on the 50th anniversary, like
I know, right?
on that day.
You're 15 years away.
Yeah, well,
oh my god,
it's fine. We'll have plenty of new Mario games to hold it over till then, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I am more excited for new Mario games than I am for the HD remake of 64, as much as people obviously want that remake, and I will be happy when that remake eventually does come out, and I will give it a go, because I had a good time with this.
I'd like to close out with this email from Rachel from Kent in the UK, who wrote in, I think probably mirrors, maybe a little more negative on the game than us. I'd probably kind of mirrors our sentiments, and says, "Hi Bally and MBZ, hope you and yours are well amongst everything going on. I'm writing in with some of my thoughts about Super Mario 64, having now collected all 120 stars, something which neither of us did."
That's the difference.
Maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's the reason she's less positive on it. Yes. I think perhaps similar to you, I first played this game in its DS form, and despite getting what is all 150 stars in that game several times and picking up the N64 cartridge some years ago, this is the first time I've got every star in the original game by way of 3D All-Stars. I have no nostalgia for it and wasn't there for its release and the revolution it so often is cited for. As a result, it doesn't land for me as it does for many. Although I can safely call it a good game and getting all the stars is very much a notch in my belt, I feel it's been far surpassed by the 3D Mario games that have come since. My gripes aren't exactly original, mostly camera controls and irksome stars holding back the truly special parts of the game. If you bear with me for a slightly strange metaphor, it feels like being an atheist in the Vatican. As much as there are parts that are plainly significant, mainly even some which convince you as to its majesty, and the memory sure will stick with you, it's just not for you. You smile, you shrug, and you book your next holiday for, say, a more tropical destination. ... All the best, Rachel. And yes, I mean, I think I tend to agree with that idea that it has been surpassed by what came after it in different ways. In some ways, I would say it does stuff better than some of those games. Like, there is a nature to the snappiness of just the 2-minute star, the 1.5 minute star. You jump in, you get it, you're out onto the next one, which things slow down a lot more after this. Like, there's a lot more involvedness in Sunshine and Galaxy, and Odyssey is the one that finally kind of gets back to that snappiness, but it does something kind of different because you're never taken out of the level again. You're just in the level the whole time.
It feels like all 3D Marios have such a strong link to this game, obviously, and they all go off in their own different crazy ways, like as you've said. And
yes,
I definitely agree with what Rachel has said for the most part, and people do worship this game, and I think it generally does deserve the worship it gets as like its importance on the video game industry. But one caveat to that I would say is, I think it would arguably have had more importance on the video game industry if 3D platformers were a bit more common these days. And the fact that 3D platformers, if you're talking about sales or commerciality or even critically acclaimed in the video game industry today, make up such a fraction of what we think of as important video games.
Well, it's the thing, right, that happened past that generation is the main verb of video games changed from jump to shoot, right? Shoot became the main verb, and since then has continued to be the thing going forward.
I'd go even wider and suggest games like Ocarina of Time are more important, where adventure games in that sense and dungeons and bosses and the Zelda sense have gone on to inspire far wider, more games that have critical and commercial impact on the industry than the 3D platformers, the Mario 64 Genesis, perhaps, and
I think part of that is because it's much harder to make something an RPG from a platformer, right? You can see the roots of Zelda in more modern, even games like Destiny and leveling systems and things like that,
Totally.
And how it's kind of evolved from there. But Mario platforming is much harder to, I don't know, get working in that sense.
And it is mad that we are 24 years on from Mario 64, and in some senses, no one's really even come close to matching Nintendo when it comes to 3D platforming. Like, there are some very good 3D platformers out there, sure, and I know that this most recent Crash Bandicoot sounds really good, and there's games like Ratchet and Clank and Spyro's in and amongst there, but from what I've played, they don't really come close to like that lineage of Mario, and I think that's a crazy thing to think about in sort of the history of 3D platformers that all started with Mario 64.
It did indeed. And yeah, Mario 64, a very good video game. We enjoyed going back to it, and we hope you did as well. And thanks everybody for writing in, giving us your thoughts about the game. But it's not about to stop here. Bally, we're going to be back with a vengeance in a little bit of time. We're going to take a bit of a break, but we will be back talking about Super Mario Sunshine when?
It will be episode 183, and that will come out on Monday, the 23rd of November.
Yes, so if you have thoughts about Super Mario Sunshine, if you haven't started it in the collection yet, get going. I've started it. I will likely stream a lot of me playing Mario Sunshine because I want torture to be broadcast throughout the internet.
I've heard some very frustrating things about like completion, and you need a certain number of shines to unlock certain things that I had never realized when I was younger.
Yes, that's one of the things that we didn't really talk about aside from the start of this section was Mario 64 has the freedom of going pretty much anywhere to get whatever stars you want, to mash together 70 stars to get to the end. Like, it doesn't really matter where you get them from. As long as you have that number, you're free to go. Sunshine doesn't unlock itself until you have beaten the 7 main shines in each of the stages. You have to have completed them all.
In Sunshine?
Yes, you have to.
You need the first 7?
Yes, of every stage. Otherwise, the final boss doesn't open for you.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Right.
So...
Fun times.
Yes. Fun times. I'm excited. Oh boy.
And we're not touching blue coins before anyone asks.
No. No.
And if you can get the pachinko shine, we don't believe you.
Yeah. It's a lie. It's a lie. Great. Well, let's wrap things up then, Bally. Where can people find us on the internet? Twitter, Patreon, things like that. Let's go for Patreon first. We have a Patreon. You can support us at patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. And we'd love to thank some of our supporters for supporting us.
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S., Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my fiancée Caroline. Thank you so much for all your support. It's hugely appreciated. We'll have another episode of This Nintendo Life coming out next week, where we're going to be talking about everything away from Nintendo, and you can listen to all those episodes of Nintendo Life for a single $1. So we would hugely appreciate the support if you want to support us over there on patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife.
Fantastic. Obviously, you can send your emails into the show if you want to be included on the Mario Sunshine episode, as well as just general emails for us. You can send them to our email address, which is Bally.
ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We want your sunshine thoughts.
Absolutely. You can also go to our Discord, which is linked in the description, and I think we're going to be starting to get people to chat over there about Sunshine and give their opinions on there too. And yeah, you can find us all over the place. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on TuneIn, we're on whatever podcatching app you have. Just search for This Nintendo Life, subscribe, and get it to your podcasting app every time we upload an episode without even having to go look for it. It's just there. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. You can obviously find us over on the social medias. On Twitter, we are at TNL Podcast. That has links to our Discord, to our YouTube, to all the things we're doing, telling you polls, memes. We've got Bally, Funky Kong, new funky mode is coming this winter for this Nintendo Life. That's a fun thing. Yeah, you can find me at Lord NBZ. Did I say the name of the Twitter? It's at TNL Podcast, by the way. At TNL Podcast. I'm Lord NBZ, where I'm tweeting about how I'm playing Hades nonstop, and it's my life now. Bally, how about you?
I'm playing a lot of Hades as well, and you can see all my thoughts at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
Fantastic. That's going to close us out. Big show this week. It's like 3 hours, I think. But hey, we had a lot to say about Mario 64. We hope you enjoyed. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode for you. Until then, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye, folks.